Havish. So Havish consults organizations on enterprise level and functioning data analytics requirements, focusing on spreadsheet modeling and automation using VBA and Power Query, as well as data visualization on Power BI and Tableau. He's also been the founder of Decode Research and Analytics, which is amongst top 20 most promising marketing research firms in India by Silicon India. And he has also taught at various institutions, which includes the top IIMs and IITs. So all the IIM Ahmedabad, Calcutta, Bangalore, Lucknow, Kozhikode, Shillong, and all the top IIMs and XLRI, and all the top engineering institutes like IIT Kharagpur, Bombay, Madras, Kanpur. So, and he has also been the head of research at Travers Strategy Consultants, which has been top 10 most promising market research firms in India. And this is also by Silicon India in 2017. So Havish, and I'll also like to mention the technologies he has expertise in, which is Excel VBA and add-ins, XML, TypeScript, Power BI, mQuery, and DAX, Tableau, Python, R, which includes web scraping, data sciences, sentiment analysis, machine learning, and SQL. So Havish, it's a pleasure having you with us at Monster Triumph. And so before we start, since Monster Triumph is one of the biggest diversity and inclusion events, I want to know your views on diversity and inclusion at workplaces.
So thank you, Ishan, for inviting me. First of all, hello to everyone. Now we have 3 hours that we'll be spending with each other. So just to lay the agenda for everyone, we are going to talk about different technologies, and it's going to be a hands-on session in the sense that we're going to talk about different technologies one by one. And Ishan mentioned diversity and inclusion. Now, being a tech guy working with multiple organizations, this is something quite close to me because I work with a lot of CXOs, and this is a part of board of directors conversations, and at various levels across the organization, there is a lot of chatter around how to improve diversity and ensure that inclusion happens. Now, specifically talking about it from a technology viewpoint, I think we mostly think of the large organizations in the world. So we think of the Microsofts and the Amazons and how they're improving on a very simple level, the gender ratio, right? I think that's the first correction that everybody needs to make sure that we are including people from different races, people from around the world, and everybody's getting an equal opportunity. Now, things have been improving for the last many years. And what is very nice to see is that this is an open conversation that is now happening, especially in technology. If you look at town halls, right, which is what started with tech firms and now every other firm seems to be doing it. I think that's a great platform because every employee in the organization now has access to the top leaders, right? And they have a room and a forum to ask their questions and address whatever topics they have on their mind. We have seen some good shifts happening, and the beauty of technology is that it is an even platform. So while in a lot of other areas there might be some preconceived notions and stereotypes that women are not suited for a specific type of industry or a specific type of function, at least in technology, it's an open platform because everybody has access to the same content. What remains to be done, though, is the fact that people have to allow equal opportunities, right? And organizations need to realize that simply giving equal effort to women and men is not enough. You know, there's a lot of catch up that we have to do because for years and years, women have not been encouraged to, let's say, take up technology or take up technology profiles. But that definitely is shifting. We see so many forums, we see so many organizations where there are women leaders, and it's a wonderful sign of things to come. And we all hope, being a part of the industry, that things keep on improving going forward.
That's a wonderful view, Havish. And like the best thing is that you've given a quite a good news that the CXOs have been laying a great focus on this front, and that's a really great thing. And and the news has also been showing the same thing, like pointing towards the same direction. For example, recently Rekha Menon ji, she's become the head of Masscom from after moving from Accenture. So we are moving on a good front. So before beginning the session, one last thing, which is a quick info for the attendees. All the attendees of this session would be receiving free courses and a certificate for attending this session. And in order to avail them, you will have to register in the Google form, through the Google form, which we'll be sharing in the comment section during the event or at the end of the event. So for getting those benefits, you'll have to register for this. Havish, let's begin with the session. I think everybody is waiting for it. Let's start with it.
Thank you, Ishan. Great, let's get started. Let me share my screen with everybody. Okay, first things first, let's get a sense of what all we're going to talk about in the next 3 hours. Which are the type of technologies that I will be discussing. And I want the expectation setting to be very clear. I will also give my introduction to give you a sense of what type of clients I work with, what type of technologies I work with, and what type of projects do I handle on a day-to-day basis for various organizations. Now, the broad areas that we're going to cover include quite a lot. So we are going to talk about automation, analytics, visualization, and insights. The reason I put these 4 things together, and they have been clubbed into what we now call business intelligence, is because business intelligence is not just about technology. If you're not using the tools to create actionable decisions and enable organizations to take those steps to improve efficiency, then the analysis does not really mean much, right? So what we are focusing on here is automation, which means that with fewer resources, reducing cost, reducing errors, you're able to handle your tasks. Analytics would be what we understand by spreadsheet modeling, working on Python and R, where we're analyzing data. Visualization is presenting that analysis to different stakeholders, both internal and external. And then finally, insights. Insights would be where the role of AI and ML comes in, because simply presenting a spreadsheet is not getting the job done, right? I mean, as a data analyst, we have this joke where we say that anybody can make a spreadsheet dance. We can force a spreadsheet to show any number that we want to. But how do you make a spreadsheet give numbers which are relevant for a business, right? That's what we want to focus on. And this entire gamut of things are clubbed into what we call BI, which is business intelligence. There are many firms that are working in these areas. So there are predominantly we'll be focusing on Microsoft tools, but over the course of the next 3 hours, I'll also introduce different tools to you so that you get a very broad sense of which are the tools that are in the market and that organizations are using. Okay, first things first, I'm a programmer, so I like to use a Notepad, and I use a slightly advanced version of the Notepad called Notepad++. If there are any coders out there, I'm sure that you are aware of this. For all the others out there, this is like Notepad on steroids. So while all of us at some point must have used Notepad, Notepad++ allows you to have multiple pages. You can format the text in a slightly better manner than your plain vanilla Notepad. I like to keep this open with me because this is like a digital notebook. As in how I talk about different topics and we discuss different things, and there is anything important that I would like to mention, or maybe there is a link that I would like to share, or perhaps there is a topic that we might want to circle back to. I personally like to chart everything down because it helps me as a facilitator. It also helps everybody else to get a sense of what all are the topics that we have covered, right? So we are starting from a blank slate, but I can assure you that by the time we end the 3-hour session, we are going to probably have 2-3 pages with us. So I run an analytics firm called Havish and Consulting. I started this a couple of years back. So predominantly our work is in Excel and Power BI, which is about 60% of what we do. And the balance, 40% is split between Tableau for data visualization, a little bit of Python and R for data science, machine learning, and AI. And we also do some web work on JavaScript. But if you wake me up in the middle of the night and you say, Havish, what do you do? What is the one thing that is your core that defines you? That would be Excel. I have been working on Excel since 2000 when I was a school student. I fell in love with it the first time I worked on it, and I never stopped working on it ever since. So over the course of my career, where I've had a corporate stint with Record, I have been in academics for a few years. I pursued my PhD unsuccessfully for a few years, worked with some market research firms, handled some very large assignments for the government of India, and then finally landed full time into analytics. In this entire haphazard journey, I have always been working on Excel. Tools have come and gone, and BI has now come in, and AI and ML has become more popular. But Excel still is something that I absolutely adore and I continue to work on. Sure, Excel has its limitations. Excel cannot do everything for you, but at the same time, it's the most popular programming language in the world, right? 750 million people around the world work on Microsoft Excel, which is by far higher than any other language out there. Now, there might be one school of thought that says that is Excel even a programming language? Absolutely. It might not be a programming language in the traditional sense that if you're a BTech IT student, then it is being taught in colleges, but it is a programming language, right? It works on Visual Basic. Now you can even do JavaScript and TypeScript on Excel, and that is what we're going to talk about. The type of clients that I work with include different industries, different functional areas. I do a lot of work in finance. I do a lot of work in HR. I work with some manufacturing firms. So I have taught organizations ranging from the big fours to consulting firms to your retailers like Amazon and Flipkart and Uber. The beauty of Excel is that everybody works on it, right? So there is something for everybody as far as my ability as an Excel instructor is concerned. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm a Microsoft Office master. I'm a Microsoft partner, and I'm a Power BI data analyst associate. I've also written 20 books on Excel. And in addition to my corporate work, which is consulting and training, I also teach at a lot of B schools around the country. So I've taught at the top 5 IIMs. So I've taught at 15 IIMs in all. I've also taught at the top 8 IITs. And I engage a lot with B school students around the year through live projects, workshops, guest lectures, competitions like that. Now, on my website, you will, of course, find a bunch of different things. One is podcast, which is conversations on data, again, with different industry leaders across different functions and different seniority levels. Then you will also find some articles and quotes. So if you're interested to find more content about what we are going to cover today, you can go and read my articles on Medium or find my repos on GitHub. Right. So that's the background. I hope that gives you a fair sense of what I have done and what areas I work on. So the first thing that I would like to do is to talk about Excel. Excel is interesting because everybody works on it, right? I mean, everybody from your fresher to a college student to a teacher in a school to the CEO of a company, everybody is working on Excel day in and day out. We have different levels of skill, we have different levels of expertise, we have different levels of requirement. But one thing is for sure that we are all consuming data on Excel. Now, if you want to be an advanced Excel user, what are the components in Excel that you need to be aware of? And there is a lot of confusion around it because people feel that, Havish, Excel is Excel, right? Like I have to learn formulas and functions like VLOOKUP and indirect and learn how to make a pivot table and create charts. That is true. But then let's look at that in a little more detail. The first thing that you learn in Excel is formulas and functions. Now, this would include everything from your equal to sum to equal to indirect to more complex functions like equal to offset. So I'm bucketing everything inside one line. So this could be formulas and functions. The second thing that we do here is work on Visual Basic for applications. That is the programming language on which Excel has been working on since its inception in 1986. And even though VBA as a language is not that popular now, so Visual Basic is a very old language and many new languages have come in and have surpassed it. VBA still works on Excel and will continue to work for the years to come. So especially if you are pursuing a career in finance, for example, or operations, VBA is very, very important. Maybe not so much for HR and marketing, but definitely finance, operations, strategy. The third component of Excel is Power Query. Power Query in one word is an ETL tool. So if any of you have worked on SQL, or I'm sure you have at least heard of SQL, where you work with relational databases, that is what Power Query does. Power Query is a different language. It uses a language called M, just the letter M. Like we have C, we have C++, and we have Python. Similarly, there's a language called M. Power Query is a tool that is inbuilt inside Excel. We will also be working on this. After that, we have Power Pivot. Power Pivot is a data modeling tool. And as it suggests, it's a tool that allows you to be able to, just like Power Query can do extract, transform, and load, Power Pivot can allow you to do calculations in a data model. So if you have a model where multiple data sets have been connected to each other, you can work on Power Pivot. It uses a language called DAX. DAX stands for Data Analysis Expressions. All of this we'll be discussing in more detail, but I'm just giving you a very high-level overview as of now. The next thing that we are looking at is JavaScript, and we also have TypeScript. Now, this might confuse a lot of you. You must be thinking, how does suddenly JavaScript come into Excel? Now, around 2014, Microsoft realized that cloud is super important. And while Excel still is a very dominant on-premise software, which means that organizations are installing it on their computers, there is a transition that we see, which is that we're moving to the cloud. What that means is that JavaScript are used to create what we call web apps. Again, something I'll be discussing. And TypeScript is used for what is called the script editor, which means that if you want to run VBA or something similar to that on the cloud, that is where TypeScript is required. So if you want to be an advanced Excel user and you want to pursue a career in analytics, you need to have some level of knowledge of all of these things. You don't need to necessarily be an expert at everything. In fact, it's very unlikely that you will be an expert at everything. But yes, it is very important for you to make sure that you have some level of knowledge about all of these things. So let's start with them, and we'll cover these topics one by one. So the first thing I want to do is to open a new Excel file. By the way, a tip for everyone, if you type excel.new and you have already signed in to Microsoft, it will automatically open a new Excel file for you. Right? So it's a shortcut to quickly open a spreadsheet on the cloud. Now, ideally, you should all have the Microsoft 365 subscription, which means that you will get all the latest features. But even if you work with the free account, you will still be able to access most of the features. But if you see that your version of Excel does not support these features, that is because you are not working on the current version of Microsoft. So that version is called Microsoft 365. And as you can see, Microsoft 365 is available for both home users and business users. And for the home users, it will cost you $4,899 per year or $489 per month, right? Plus taxes. Now, a lot of you must be thinking, but we already have a laptop which we purchased last year and it has Office Home or Office Student installed on it. Some of you might say that, Havish, we have Office 2019, for which we have already paid money. So why should we pay more money for this, which is definitely more costly? If you want all the latest features, you need to have Microsoft 365, period, right? There is a confusion here because Microsoft is selling perpetual licenses as well, and it is selling subscription licenses as well. Now, Microsoft's game plan is that if you're purchasing a perpetual license for, let's say, 10,000 rupees, you might end up using it for 7 years. So per year, if you do the math, you're only paying about 1,400, right? So about 100 rupees a month. But if you purchase this Microsoft 365, you're going to get more features, all the latest updates, but it's going to cost you almost 4 times that amount of money. Long story short, if you need all the latest features of Microsoft Excel, then you don't have a choice. You have to work on Microsoft 365. So I would like that, write that here as well. So Microsoft 365, right, has all features. Okay. Now, one question is that Does this have every feature as the desktop version of Excel? For example, if I open Excel like this, more or less, I would not say that there is 100% parity that every shortcut will work and every feature will be there. But over the years, what Microsoft has now done is that they have tried to make it so similar to the desktop version that even on the cloud, you will have nearly all the features. Not every single one, but nearly all the features. Right? So we start with a simple example, and let me just increase the size. And I already have a data set with me, which I'm going to copy and paste here to help us save some time. All right. So what I've taken here is two columns, one with sales and the other with profit margin. And it seems to be a very simple question, right? That if these are different transactions, how do you find out the total profit for each transaction? Most of us, right? I would say 99% of us will think correctly that Havish, it should be the first one multiplied by the corresponding value, right? So 214 multiplied by 9%, that tells us 19.26. And once we've written the first formula, we can drag it down. So I can simply drag it down and it tells us the result. So what's the big deal? This is how we have been taught to work on Excel for so many years. But now there is an update in Excel. In the last 2 years, slowly a new feature has started to get rolled out, which is called dynamic arrays. And what does dynamic arrays do? Dynamic arrays allow you to get multiple results using one formula. Let me explain how that works. Usually the process of writing a formula is to write one formula and then copy it down. But what if I simply select B5 to B17? That means I'm selecting the entire array and I'm multiplying that with the entire corresponding array. That means B5 to B17 multiplied by C5 to C17. If you say that this is wrong, I would not deny that, because in a way, this is not correct. How can you multiply an entire series of values with another series of values? It doesn't make sense, right? And if you had tried to do this as recent as 2019 or early 2020, this would have given you a value error. That means for 34 years, Excel did not support the concept of multiplying an entire column with another column. In fact, if you try to do this on your version of Excel right now, in all likelihood, you will also get an error. But how is it that I'm getting an answer like this? Because we are working on Microsoft 365. And Microsoft 365 has something called dynamic arrays, which means that we can use an entire column and another corresponding column, and we can get the result like this. Very cool, right? Now, if we go through the formula, there are a few small things that we should be observing. First thing, you can see that there is a blue border that is appearing around all the cells. What is that telling us? It is telling us that there is something special about this, right? It is not a simple formula. It is a formula that will result in multiple values. And that is what is happening here. Also, if you look at the formula bar, the first formula, the first cell says that B5, B17 multiplied by C5, C17. But if I go to the second and the third and the fourth cell, you notice that the color changes. So the first formula is black in color, as you can see here. So the first formula is black in color, but all the others are gray in color. That means that in all of these cells, there is really no formula because we've only written one formula. And the formula is spilling into other cells. And what do I mean when I say it is spilling into other cells? Let us say there was a value written here. What will happen is now this formula will not work and it will give me a spill error because it is trying to tell me that Havish, it doesn't make sense. You're trying to get multiple results, but you have not given me enough space. And that's the reason why it cannot show you the results in all of these cells. And the moment we remove it, it will work correctly. And since we're learning something new and something different, and I would say a little complex, it doesn't hurt to go online and quickly look at dynamic arrays. And you will notice that dynamic arrays are only available for Microsoft 365. So if you're working on Office 2007, 10, 13, 16, 19, whichever version you have, home, office, student, it doesn't matter. You will not have this feature unless and until you're working on Microsoft 365. And as you can see, it was only released in January 2020. So it's only about a year that it has been there. And even then, it is not available to all the users. Gradually, more and more organizations are getting access to this update that is coming up. All right. Let's continue with one more example. So let me go back and take another data set. The question should be very clear. I can see that there are some mobile numbers that have to be given. And we have to essentially see how many of these numbers are correct. See, this is the automation part, right? Like, who is going to go and find out manually if the data has been given correctly to you or not? You need to build a system that will automatically give you the result for this. Now, we can clearly see that some of them have more than 10 digits, some of them have lesser than 10 digits. So I will say equal to length, and we can see that the length is 10, and the length is not the same for all of them. Using the learning that we had in the previous example, I will say that equal to the length of not just B5, but till B18. What happens? How can we find the length of all the cells at the same time? Because you need to find the length of each cell independently, correct? And that is exactly what Excel is going to take care of. So Excel is very smart. And Excel says that, you know what, you have told me to find the length of all of these numbers. So we have 14 numbers with us. And because we can't show 14 results in one cell, it will show us 14 results in 14 different cells. And as you can see, some of the numbers are 8 characters in length. Some of them are 9 or 10 or 11. This is great, but then it is still not giving me the answer that we want. So if I want to automate the process, I need to find what is the percentage of numbers that are incorrect. So very smartly, we can say here that, you know what, we know the length of characters, but I also want to convert this into either true or false. So I will say is not equal to 10. So what that means is that each of these numbers will be compared to 10, and there will be two results that we get. We will get either false or true, like this. That means that if it is greater than 10 or it is less than 10, it will come as true. Otherwise, it will come as false. But the problem is that I still need to find the count. I need to know how many trues are coming here. And to do that, we put a double negative. Let me also increase the size. Okay. We do something called a double negative. So there are two minus signs that I'm putting. And what the double negative does is it will convert your false into a 0, and it will convert the true into a 1, like this. And why are we doing this? Because if we have the results as true and false, then how can I sum up or how can I count the number of trues and the number of false? So I'm doing a double negative here, and this will give me zeros and ones. And I'm sure all of you can guess what is the final step required. I just have to find the sum of all of these ones and zeros, and that will tell us that there are 3 numbers in my data set that are not exactly 10 characters. So you can see here, this is 11, this is 9, and this is also 9. But to find it as a percentage, simply divide it We simply divide it by the total count of all the numbers. And if we convert this into a percentage, it tells us that 21%, right, is not correct. Like this. Right, everybody? So we have 14 numbers, out of them 3 are not correct. So obviously the result is 21%. Assuming that one of these again had an error in it, it would tell me that 29% of my values are not correct. So what we have learned in this example is the double negative, right? So quickly hopping over back to Google. Just give me a moment. Let's come back. Hopping over back to Google. The double negative is called the unary operator. Right? I'm also going to write this down in the Notepad, the unary operator. And as you can see, the unary operator is not something which is there for Excel. Unary operator is a programming concept, and it says that in mathematics, a unary operation is only one operand, which is a single input. Now, this is not exactly what we were expecting, right? Because we have unary minus, increment, and decrement. So don't get confused, right? So if you come from a programming background, unary operator means a little different when you're talking about programming or mathematics. But when we're using unary operator in Excel, or what we call the double negative, you will notice that the moment we put a double negative, what does it do? This coerces the true and false into the numeric equivalent. That means that true becomes 1 and false becomes 0. Right? That's all it does. Right? It's a very simple concept when you think about it, but it is a little vague, right? Because a lot of people say, why would we want to do it exactly? But I hope that in the example you saw how the unary operator can be very, very handy. And when you're creating more complex spreadsheets for automation, there is a lot of requirement of getting ones and zeros. See, the problem with getting true and false is that you can't do an arithmetic calculation on them. I can't find the average, or I can't find the count or the sum, right? If it is a true and false. But if it is a 1 and a 0, then there is a bunch of arithmetic calculations that are possible. Right? That's the reason unary operator is super important. All right, let's come back. And I will also take 10 seconds to quickly fix my screen so that there is no disturbance that comes in. All right. So we've done the formula that will give you multiple results. We've also done the unary operator. Let us do one more. So let us look at my scenarios. We will copy this back in Excel. So what we have here is a list of customers who have purchased from us in the previous year. So I can see that the previous year sales is 21,000, 46,000, 19,000, and so on. And there is a target that we have given to each of these customers. So 10%, 12%, 14%, and 16%. Now, if you think of the basic formula is actually not that difficult. So let me increase the column width to 15. Perfect. The basic formula is not really that difficult. We can write equal to my previous year sales multiplied by 1 plus my expected target, which means my expected growth of 10%. What does it do? It tells me that 21,000 plus 10% of 21,000, which is 2,100, will become 23,100, which is fairly simple. But if I try to copy this formula in all the other cells, it doesn't really work. It gives me some very erratic results, as you can see, right? And the reason that is happening is because we have to put dollar signs. We want to lock a cell. That means that when I copy the formula into the next cell, Control C and Control V, you notice that it is multiplying C7 by D6, not by D5. Same thing, when I copy this to the right, it is multiplying D6 by E5. It is not multiplying C6 by E5. And how do we lock the cell? So if you want to lock the column, we will lock by placing a dollar sign. And in this, we want to lock the row. So we place a dollar sign like this. And as you can see, we get the perfect result. So 21,000 previous year sales, expecting a growth of 10%. We expect to do how much? 23,100. If you've done 9,000 in the previous year, and we're expecting a growth of 14%, then we're expecting 9,000 plus 14% of 9,000. So we're expecting 10,260. So this is one way of getting the result. And I don't want to mess around with it, but I want to duplicate my sheet. And let's look at a different way of doing the same thing. Now, using the concept of dynamic arrays, we should be able to get the result using a single formula. Now, this was never available in Excel because I've been teaching this topic for so many years, and I've probably conducted over 700 trainings where I have covered this example. And we have always taught participants to write one formula, put the dollar signs, and then copy and paste it. But what we want to do right now is to get the same result using a single formula. That means equal to, we will select C6 to C13, so the entire column, multiplied by 1 plus D5 to H5. So what we're essentially doing is to tell Excel that, see, we don't want to give you the cells one by one, which means that I have to copy the formula in all the cells below and to the right. We want to make this process easier, which means that, just give me a moment. Let me close the parentheses as well. To make this process easier, you notice that I just wrote a single formula, right? And by writing that one single formula, we get all the results at the same time. And if you compare the two sheets, we are getting exactly the same result. But I'm sure all of you will agree that from an automation perspective, this is so much more efficient because it is shorter. It does not require you to write dollar signs. There is no manual copy and paste required. And when you're creating large, complex files, you want to save as much time as possible. And more important than the time, you want to make it automated, right? So a person doesn't need to put in a lot of effort to make modifications in the formula. That is the power of dynamic arrays. Great. Let's come back to another example. Let me increase the column width. Excellent. So the problem that we have here is that we have some customers, and I want to know how many unique customers are present. Very simple. If I go through the data, I can see that Aaron has purchased 3 times, right? So we don't want to count add in 3 times. We have 10 transactions, but we only want to get a list of unique customers. First things first, how do you even select, how do you even create a list of unique customers before you count them? There is a function called unique, which will allow you to select the range, and it will generate a list of unique customers. So you can see these are the unique customers that we have. Now, if you want to count it, I can say equal to count A. We're using count A because we are counting text values. We're not counting numbers. And this is very interesting because if I select F5, F5 we know is the first item. But how do I know how many items are there in the list? A lot of you must be thinking, why can't we just select F11? But that is not correct because F11 is not fixed. What if tomorrow there is one more customer that gets added? So we will very smartly put a hash sign. And as you can see, the moment we put a hash sign, it automatically selects the entire array for you. That means that it will automatically calculate how many names have been given in that list, and it gives you the count as 7. Very cool, right? Let's say that one of these names got changed. I'm putting my own name here. So if I say Havish, you will see that Havish gets added to the list and the count gets changed as well, which means that you don't have to again and again go and say that, you know what, one more name has got added. So now I have to go to the formula and update it. Again, this is how we do automation. The next example I want to show you is to do with the sorting of a data. And I know a lot of you must be thinking, what is so special about sorting a data? We all know how to do that, right? So let me just increase the column width. If I may, let's make it 25. That's great. Let's auto-fit the row height. All right. So the first question we have here is that there is a list of customers, and we can see that there are 13 customers that we have. There are 3 types of shipping modes. So we have A, B, and C. And we also have the sales quantity that has been given to us. What if I want to know in a descending order the sales amount? That means equal to sort. Very simple. So when we say equal to sort, I can select my range. In the sort index, we will not put anything. In the sort order, we have a choice. So if I put 1, you notice that we get an ascending order. And if I put a -1, we will get a descending order. Very simple. Which also means that I can write 1 here, or rather I can write ASC. So I'm creating ascending or descending. So let's just write A here. And we can say that, let me just increase the size once. So we can say that the user has a choice to decide whether we want to see it in ascending or whether we want to see it in descending. Now, if you want to see it in ascending, we will say that if the value that we have selected is, if the value in F1 is equal to A, then the result should be -1, otherwise the result should be 1. Now, why exactly have we done this? Because if you notice, we are getting the result in a descending order. But if I wanted to see the results, I'm sorry, we wanted to see the results in a descending order. So let me just put it the other way around. In a descending order, we can just change it to D and we get in a descending order. This is so smart because usually we have to apply a filter to the data and then we have to manually come to that column and apply that filter. But now it will happen dynamically. But what if we want to know who these people are? Like, I know that this is the descending order of sales amount, but which customer had 490, which customer had 473? How do we find that? To do that, we will now say equal to sort by. What are we trying to sort? The array, which has the sales values. But this will come later because this time we are not sorting the sales, we are actually sorting the names. And the sales value will become the by array. That means we are using the sales value as the order to decide what should be the order of customer names. And as you can see, Vivek is coming number one because Vivek is the minimum. Jack is coming at the last one because Jack, as you can see, is the largest number, 490. So let me just reverse the order. So we can say that the sort order should be -1, and we get Jack at the top and Vivek at the bottom. Very smart, right? So without needing to apply a filter, usually we have to go to the data and then say data, and then we have to click on filter, and then we have to manually come here and do this. Now we don't have to do that anymore because we will be able to simply do this using a function that we have created. All right, let's go on. So the reason I'm putting everything in one spreadsheet is that we will also share the file with you. So in case you want to practice on your own or you want to check any of the formulas that I've written, you will be able to do that. So let us go to the column width, increase it, and also do a auto fit row height. Perfect. What we are trying to do here is to take a customer database. So I have the customer name, I have the shipping mode, and I have the sales amount. Now, in business, if your manager asks you suddenly, Havish, can you tell me how many customers have purchased from standard class shipping and the transaction is between 0 to 400? It's a very simple requirement, but this means that you have to come to the data, you will have to go to data, then you will have to click on filter. After that, you will have to select standard class, which means that I will have to say that out of all the options that have to be given to me, I have to say that we are selecting standard class. Once again, I'll have to go to sum of sales. We will have to say that we only want to see the numbers that are between 0 to 400. So I will say between 0 to 400. This means that we have taken the complete data, and from the complete data, we are taking a subset of the data. But it doesn't make sense, right? Because if I suddenly ask you, can you now tell me how many people are not in standard class, but in first class, you have to reapply the same thing. So there is no automation in this process right now. And that is exactly what we want to do here. So what we will do is remove the filter. We don't really need the filter right now. We will write a function called filter. That's what we want to do, right? We want to filter the data without literally applying a filter manually. We want to automate the task. So what we do here is we will say equal to filter. After saying equal to filter, we want to select the complete data like this. But in this complete data, which is from D10 to D27, there are some conditions that we have to keep. So that is the include criteria. That means that from the B10 to D27, we want to include only those rows that are meeting a specific condition. How many rows do we have right now? We have 18 rows. But out of these 18 rows, there are three conditions that have to be met. The first condition is, so let me write it in a different line. The first condition is that my values given in my shipping mode, which is from B10 to B27, should be equal to standard class multiplied by the second condition. That means that my sales values, which are from D10 to D27, should be greater than equal to 0. And this is also multiplied by a third and the final condition, which says that D10 to D27 should be less than equal to 400. And before I press enter, just think about what is happening. When I say that standard class should be matched, you will notice that only a few of these rows are meeting the condition. So the first one, the second one, then the third one, then this, and then this. So basically, not all the rows are meeting the condition. On top of that, you notice that not every single one is between 0 to 400, perhaps, right? So that means that the result will look like this. It tells me that out of the 18 transactions that we have, only these 9 transactions, half of them are meeting all the 3 conditions. And the best part is that if you change anything, let's say I change my from to 200, the list gets reduced even further because now there are only 6 transactions that are between 200 and 400. Or for that matter, if we say 300, the list reduces even further. Right? All right. Obviously, if I change something here, so if I change this to first class, that changes as well. Right? Now, the filter function is super important because the filter function allows you to save a lot of time. Because traditionally, we are always going to select our data, apply filters manually on each of the columns, and get the result. But now we are able to do this using a single function like this. This example that I'm going to cover is probably the most difficult example that we have covered up till now. So we'll spend some time on it, but it will also be a good learning for all of you. And it will enable you to understand how powerful Excel is and what level of automation you can do. So let me explain the problem statement first. Let me increase the column width a little more. And auto fit the row height. Perfect. What exactly is my question that we're going to ask here? I'm sure most of you can guess the problem. So what we're trying to do here is to say that we have sent email campaigns, or rather we have sent emails in a campaign to many customers that we have, right? So this is the list of customers that we have. Of course, the name can appear multiple times because we might have reached out to the same customer multiple times. Some people have unsubscribed from the list. So you can see that Aaron has unsubscribed, Anthony has unsubscribed, Ben, Jim, and Jason. Now, I want to create a new list which does not include the people who have unsubscribed. Because if somebody has unsubscribed, it would be incorrect for us and non-ethical for us to send them an email once again. Now, it seems like a very simple task, doesn't it? That I'm asking you that, okay, from all these customers, there are these 5 people who have unsubscribed. Can you delete these names? But you see how difficult it is. Because if I ask you to delete Aaron, you will have to go and check how many times Aaron is coming, and you'll have to delete everyone. Then you will have to check how many times Anthony is coming, and then you will have to delete it. Is it possible to do manually without writing a formula? Absolutely. But it is practical to do that? Not at all. So that's why I would not recommend you to do that. So what we're doing here is the first thing I will say equal to X lookup, right? That means we are searching for the first value, which is B4, till the last value, which is B42. Now this is the lookup value, and what is the lookup array? Where are we searching for it? We are searching in column C. So think what will happen. If I search for B4, which is Aaron, in the column C, will it give us the result? Absolutely, because Aaron is there in the list. If I search for Justin, we will not get the result because Justin is not there in the list. But we also have to give a return array, right? Because the result also is from column C. Now, a lot of you must be thinking, but why exactly are we writing it 2 times? Because the first time we are writing it, it is the lookup array. The second time, it is the return array. It will be clearer when you see the result. So when I press enter, something has happened. Why is Aaron coming? Because Aaron is there in the C column. Aaron has unsubscribed. Why are these people not coming? Because these people have not unsubscribed, which is good. So in this case, the NA is a good thing. It is not an error. The NA means that the person has not unsubscribed. So what we will do is, I can now write is NA, and that will convert my NA into true, and it will convert the result into false, which makes sense, right? So what I'm doing is I only am interested in the true. True are the people who have not unsubscribed from my email campaign. So true is good for us, and that is how we have converted the results into true and false. So far, so good. Now we have a list of true and false, but the question is that I would like to apply this, right, list of true and false into a filter condition. So we will say that, okay, let me go to filter, and I want to filter B4 till B42. And what is the inclusion criteria? Some of them are true, some of them are false, right? So let's see what happens now. So when I press enter, you will notice that there is a new list that has been generated. But if you look at this, this list is smaller. And if you look carefully, you will notice that Aaron in this list is not coming because Aaron has already purchased from us. I'm sorry, Aaron has already unsubscribed from us. So Aaron is not coming. Justin, right? If you look in this list is coming because Justin is not in the unsubscribed list, like that. That is how we are able to get the result. Now, if we go to the bottom, you will notice that there's something strange happening. There is an Aaron coming here, right? But that doesn't make sense, no, because Aaron should have been removed from the list. So let's just press Ctrl Z and go back one step. So you will notice here that this is coming as true, but here the Aaron is coming as true, true, and true, right? Once again, the first one, Aaron is coming as false, right? But in the final one, it is coming as true, true, and true, right? But that's okay because these are different people, right? So far, so good. But why are these names coming multiple times? The same name is not getting repeated, which is great. But then why are these names coming multiple times? Obviously, because we have not removed the duplicates. So the final step that we require to do, everyone, is to simply write unique. And as you can see, we get a list of unique customers to whom I should be sending out the email. So once again, the problem statement was that there are different people to whom you have sent an email campaign. Some of them have unsubscribed. And you only want to make sure that the email is now being sent out to those people who have not unsubscribed from your list. Imagine if you had done this manually, it would have taken you a lot of time. And now with the beauty of these functions, which are unique filter, we're able to do this in such a much simpler manner. But can we improve the formula even further? Let's give it a shot. You will notice that B4, B42 is being selected 2 times, correct? So if I write let, and I say that my data is equal to B4 B42, what we are doing is we are essentially saying that before B42 is being selected 2 times, once in the filter, once in the X lookup. That means that I want to give it a variable name, which is a my data, any name that you want to give. And let me close the parentheses as well. And so far it works, but what is the advantage of doing it? Now I can write my data, and we still get the same result. And why exactly have we done this? Because don't you feel that now the formula looks much better? We're able to get the result without needing to write B4, B42 2 times. We only need to write it 1 time, right? So you can give as many range names as you want. So I can say that this is a more descriptive name. So rather than writing my data, I will say emails. And I also say here that it is emails. Same thing here, emails and emails. We can even give one more variable declaration. So I can say that the name that we want to give here is unsub. I'm not writing the complete name since it will be very long, but let's say unsub, which is for unsubscribe, then C:C. And now here also we can write unsub and unsub. Same result. And the formula is now much more descriptive. It's much easier for me to write the formula, for me to explain it to other people, and for other people to modify it. So when you automate tasks, whether it's in Excel or in Power Query or in any programming language, you have to remember that it's not just about how efficiently you have done the work, right? I work as a consultant with so many organizations, and I get hired to improve the efficiency. A lot of people feel that consultants are called, data analytics consultants are called when there is a problem. But that is not really true. I mean, I would say that 90% of the work that I have done has been when I have simply been called to improve something, not really to fix a problem. So maybe the organization was doing this manually, and it used to take them 5 hours to do it. And then there is also a possibility of an error that used to happen. And when I have done this, when I've written a formula or I've automated the process, we have reduced the task to 30 minutes and reduced the possibility of errors happening, right? So that's what you have to keep in mind. One is that you have to improve the efficiency, not necessarily fix the problem. Sometimes there is no problem. Sometimes you just want to reduce the turnaround time. You want to improve the efficiency. Also, if I write a very complex formula, which works perfectly, and I share it with the client, does that mean that my job is done? Not really. A good data analytics consultant would be somebody who is not just creating a result or a solution, but also doing it in a way that the other people, right, the other stakeholders are able to modify it and understand it. So if I write it in this manner, where the variable declaration has been given, it makes much more sense, because a person can look at the formula and understand it. Okay, I'm filtering the emails and I'm doing an X lookup with the emails and the answer like this. See, nobody is going to ask you to do these things, but if you do these things is what makes you a better consultant, right? When you're working in data analytics. All right. Let's just see what is the next problem that we want to solve. We've already done X lookup, so we'll not do that again. Let's quickly recap what all we have done up till now. So I have shown you dynamic arrays. We have done the unary operator. After that, we have done a few functions. So I showed you how $signs can be removed. This is very important. Then the next thing we did was the unique function. We have done the hash. Then we have done sort and sort by. So we've done unique. We have seen how the hash works. If you want to select the entire list of items in an array, we have also done the sort function. We have done the sort by function, right? Let me make it capitalized. After that, we have done filter. And finally, we have done X lookup and let. Okay. So we have done filter and X lookup, and we have also done is any, and here we have also done let. Now let is very smart because this is, remember I said to you in the beginning that Excel is now becoming a programming language. In fact, there's a very interesting article that came out sometime back. Look at this. Microsoft Excel becomes a proper programming language. This article came out in a few months back in the month of February, and Microsoft obviously has an R&D team, right? So they have a research team, and we know that Excel has been around for 34 years. But coming down to what is important, there is something called Lambda, right? And Lambda is again a term that is associated not just with Excel, but it is associated with other programming languages as well. So if you do Lambda, right, you will see that Lambda is not just for Excel. Lambda essentially is used by AWS, by Amazon Web Services. Lambda is used by Python as well. So it's a general term. And what it means is that it is an anonymous function. What that means is it is a function that is not stored in a program file. Let me explain that. If we say equal to sum, or if we write equal to VLOOKUP, these are functions that have been created by the developer, right, by Microsoft. If we write a function in Visual Basic, if we create a function, even then we are storing it somewhere. We have to write it somewhere. But the beauty of Lambda is that you don't need to store it anywhere. So you don't need to code, what we call no code, right? So we call this a no code platform. So no code essentially means that without learning how to code, you can still get results which are much more powerful than just using Excel as a basic user. And the introduction of Lambda in Excel was such a pivotal movement because that happened, a couple of months back, that Satya Nadella came up with a LinkedIn post saying that Excel formulas, which is the world's most powerful programming language, is not Turing complete. Turing complete basically just means that it is you're now able to create your own functions anonymously without learning how to code. Right? I'll not get into details here. You can Google it and you can see how it works. But it's a wonderful feature that has got launched. And I will not be able to show it to you because even I don't have it yet. I expect to get it in the next few months. Right? So make sure to search for Lambda, because Lambda has now finally made Excel a proper programming language. Right, everybody? Okay. All right. Let's clean up a little bit. Now let's go back to what I told you in the beginning. So I told you we will do formulas and functions, which we have been doing so far. Let us now come to Visual Basic, which is VBA. Now Visual Basic does not work on the cloud, right? So if you want to work with Visual Basic, just give me a moment. Let me close my window. All right. So if you want to work with Visual Basic, then we need to work on our local version of Excel, right? But Visual Basic will work on every version of Excel. Let me write that down. So VBA does not work online, but VBA will work on all desktop versions. Okay, so we have an Excel file with us. And the first thing that we want to do is to save it in a special format. Now, usually when we save an Excel file, so for example, if I save it on my desktop, you will see that we are saving it as an Excel SX, which is the default format. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to work with VBA, if you want to work with macros, then you have to save it as a second format, which is XLSN, which is a macro-enabled workbook. This is a must because your regular Excel file cannot run macros in it. Okay? So let me save it. Also, if you notice, I'm using two terms, right? I'm using VBA and macros. And there's a lot of confusion around which one is which, right? Why do we call it VBA versus macros? Now, VBA, everybody, is the programming language, which is used on Microsoft, right? So Microsoft tools like Outlook, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. So it is an event-driven programming language. It is inbuilt into MS Office. So you don't have to install anything else. And it is available on all versions of Excel. And even though in 2008, it was declared as a legacy language, which means that the future is not VBA. Microsoft is not looking at VBA for working on the cloud and on the internet because now they are using JavaScript and TypeScript, but VBA still is very, very important. And especially if you're working in finance or in operations, VBA is super important. Predominantly in finance. If you're working in finance and you want to work with investment banking firms, if you want to work with big fours, VBA is super, super important. It is a very important job skill. For other functions, you can maybe choose not to do it, but I still recommend to have at least a little bit of idea of what VBA is. Macros, on the other hand, are nothing to do with Visual Basic. So macros, if you notice, are a computer science term. So it's a general term, which means that it's a rule-out pattern that allows you to convert an input into an output. That's all. So macros will be available on other programming languages as well. Right? So if you notice, when I say macros in C, interestingly, macros in Python, right? If you say macros in JavaScript, you can see that even though it doesn't really work the way you would expect it to, you can see that people ask questions about how do you run macros, basically automate tasks, right? Macros is a way of automating tasks. That would be the simple way of understanding what it does for you. So now that we've done the technical background, let's see how they work in action. Right? So this is the general computing term. And VBA is the use of macros in MS Office. Right? Out of the 750 million Excel users around the world, maybe 1% of 1% or 1% work on VBA, right, in their entire life. And because this is an advanced topic and you need to learn programming to be able to do this, the feature for VBA has been put under the developer tab. Because Microsoft says that only if you are a developer, if you know programming, can you work with VBA, right? And on most of your systems, you will notice that developer tab is not visible right now. And you have to enable it manually. So the way we do that is go to File, and then go to Options. Once we go to File and Options, we can select Customize Ribbon. And in Customize Ribbon, we have the Developer tab, and we simply have to select it. By default, it would not be selected, but we have to select it like this. Okay. This is only a one-time task. The first time you enable the Developer tab, it gets permanently enabled on your system. And you notice that in the developer tab, both the terms have been given here. We have Visual Basic and macros as well. Right? Now, when we click on Visual Basic, a new window will open up like this. Ignore this rubber duck that you see. The rubber duck is an additional software that I have on my system. You don't need to bother with it, right? So when we open Visual Basic, this is the window that we get. You can see that on the left side, we have all the Excel files that are open on my computer right now. Below that, we have the properties window, and then you have this large area where you can write your code. So let us start with a very simple example. So what we will do is to go to my file, which is book 1. And you notice that my workbook has 2 things in it. We have the sheet and the workbook. But we want to create a third entity, which is called a module. So right click and then insert and then module. And this module, everybody, which is called module 1, is where we'll be writing all of our code. Now there are 3 ways to get the code. So there are 3 ways to do this, everyone. Number 1, you can record it and replay it. That's the first one. The second one, I can copy from the internet. And the third one is that I can write from scratch. For most of you, the record and replay will work very well. For some of you, copying from internet, not some of you, in fact, for all of you, copy from internet is super important, because whenever you're working in any form of programming or coding, you have to learn to copy snippets of code from the internet. So there are websites like Stack Overflow, which is the world's largest developer community, that allow you to search for a question and you can get results. So for example, if I type Vba, you can see that there are many people who have questions related to Vba. There are 16,000 questions, and people from around the world have answered these questions. Okay. So we want to record and replay, we want to copy from the internet, and we want to write from scratch. Let's do all these 3. Okay. To tell you how to record it, first we need some data. So I'm going to take name and then the sales value. So we'll say that the name is A and B and C, and the sales value is 10 and 20 and 30, right? Very simple. Now we have the name and the sales value, but what we are trying to do here is to automate the task of cleaning the data and writing the formula. Okay, let's see how we do this. So what we will do is to go to developer, right, and click on record macro, this one. Record macro means that every command that I am performing. So if I click on the right arrow or the left arrow, if I write a formula, every single one of these actions will get recorded. But before we do that, let me make a copy of the sheet so that we can also replay it. Right? Let us get started. So I click on record macro. Let's call the macro first macro. Any name that you want to give, like this. Now you notice that once I start the recording, I don't have to be in a hurry. The recording has nothing to do with time. So it is not that you have to record it quickly or faster. It will only record your keystrokes or your mouse movement. So if I click on a cell, if I resize my window, if I open another Excel file, if I create a chart, if I write a formula, these are the actions that will get recorded. So what we want to do right now is to select all the cells, and we will align it in the center. I will select A1 and B1 and we will make it bold. Then I will write the sum and we will say that the sum is equal to the sum of 10, 20, 30. Align it in the center. Make this bold as well. Let's change the color. Let us change the color for the top row as well. Increase the width. And I will apply a conditional formatting. So we will say data bar like this. After everything is done, we will also come here and write completed. And I will go to developer and stop the recording. Now, if you look at the number of steps that have been performed, we have done quite a few things. We aligned it in the center. We wrote sum. We found out the sum of 10, 20, and 30. We put everything in the center once again. The number 60 came in the center. We increased the width. I applied a conditional formatting. I applied the yellow and the green color, and I wrote complete. Now, when I go back to sheet 1, 2, and let's say the values are different. So we have D and E and F. And even the numbers are different. So 50 and 20 and 40. What we want to do now is to select A1. I will go to macros. And you can see that one macro has been given it, which is first macro. That's it. I click on run. One click, all the actions get repeated. How cool is that? Now imagine you're working with an organization, whether you're in HR, finance, marketing, it doesn't matter. Any organization that you work with, there will be repetitive tasks, right? You have to create the same tracker on every Friday or on every Monday. At the end of every month, you have to create a report. And the point is that you are repeating the same actions over and over again. And what we are doing here is we are essentially not having to repeat the actions manually because the actions have been recorded one time. I just can click on the run button and it gets replayed. But what is the code that has got recorded at the backend? Let us see that. So I will go to Visual Basic. And if I click on module 2, you can see that there is a large piece of code that has been recorded like this. Now, I know it looks very scary. If you come from a non-coding background, you might be wondering, but is this not a lot? It is. But if you break it down into different steps, it should make sense. For example, what is the first thing we did? We selected A1 to B4, right? After that, we did a center align, which is this. Then we selected A1 and B1. We made it bold. We selected A5. We put it in the center. Then we wrote sum. We selected B5, where we wrote the formula, which is this. After that, we did B5 center align. We selected A5 to B5. Applied a color. We applied our conditional formatting as well. We changed the width. So you get the idea. This is how we are working. But why is it so many lines of code? See, you don't really need to worry about it because all of this is happening automatically. But yes, if you're performing a task that requires 20, 25 actions, do not be surprised if this runs into hundreds of lines of code, right? But yes, it is not that we have to type everything or write everything or copy anything. We can just record our actions and it works perfectly. Right? All right. So I have shown you how to record and replay. Let us also see how we can copy codes from the internet. Now, Excel, as I mentioned, is a very old language. It has been around for 34, 35 years now. And over these years, there are so many users and developers who have created these pieces of code, right? Now, one question you might have is that, but even if somebody has created a solution, why will it be available for free on the internet? Now, it's very hard to explain that, but the community of developers is such that any language that you work on, you like to share, right? There is a forum, you like to interact with others, you share your work, other people comment on your work. If you have a question, people are happy to help you. right? So what we are working with is now we are looking at how to copy a code from the internet. We have already run the record and replay. Let's see how we do this. So I will type VBA code 2. That means we want to search for a VBA code to do something. So I will say create a table of content, right? As you can see, there are many websites that have told you how to do that. We will just select the first one, scroll down, and you can see that there is the entire code that has been given to you. So we will just copy it. So I'll copy the entire thing like this. All done. Once you have copied it, come back. We go to Visual Basic, and in another module, Control V, we have just pasted it. That's it. That is all. You don't have to make any change whatsoever. It is a standardized generic code. That means you can simply copy and paste it from the internet. And once you have done that, how do I run it? We go to developer, we select macros, and you notice now there are two macros available. We have the first macro, and we also have table of contents underscore create. I click on run. So nice, right? It automatically creates a table of content with the two sheet names and a hyperlink. Will it work if I have many more sheets with me? Let's give it a shot. So I have about 25 sheets with me right now. I click on table of contents create, run, and it creates a list of all the sheets. That is how easy it is to copy a code from the internet and come back and paste it. Now, the third thing that I would like to show you is how we can write some code from scratch, right? Now, even though I'm saying that we are writing it from scratch, the truth is that very few of us will actually do that, because most of you will not have that experience of coding. And even if you do, it doesn't really make sense to write code from scratch. Nobody does that. So I want to show you a hybrid approach, which means that we will record, but after recording, we will modify the code. So we're in a way modifying the code, but not writing it from scratch. So let us create a problem statement. What we will do here is to put some values. There are some numbers here, and I want to highlight the top 10 numbers. It should be fairly simple, isn't it? If you want to highlight the top 10 manually, we go to home, we go to conditional formatting, and we say top, bottom, and we select the top. You can change the number as well, but you cannot select the cell. That means that once I select the top 10 and I change the color to green, suddenly if you say, okay, no, I don't want to see the top 10, I just want to see the top 3, the manual process is quite time consuming, because first you will have to remove the rule, you will have to clear the rows from the selected cells. And after you have done that, you will have to reapply it. So I'll have to say top, and now I'll have to say top 3 like this. Now, this is not very elegant, because while it is easy, this means that every time you want to change the number, you will have to go and remove it and then reapply it. And we don't want to do that. Let us see how we can record it and we can modify it. First thing, I will go to developer. Now we have two macros with us. We want to record a third macro. So we click on record macro, and let's just call it apply colors. So let's just say select top 10 like this. Okay, now watch carefully. We select all the cells. I will go to conditional formatting. And the first action that I will perform is to remove any existing rules, because the order should be to first remove anything which is already existing. And after you have done that, then you apply a new rule, right? So the order is very important. I will remove the rule, and then I will come and say that top and change the color to green, right? So far, so good. Let me go to developer and stop the recording. Let us see if it works or not. So if you go to macros and I run my select top 10, in fact, let me first remove it. Otherwise, how will you see that it is even working, right? So I'm just keeping some different numbers here. Everybody ran between 200 and 500. And let's also remove the format. So you notice that if I go to developer and we go to macros and we run select top 10, it works. So far, so good. So it is working, but I can't change the number, right, in this cell, in I2. So let's go to developer and Visual Basic now. And as you can see, we have our code here, select top 10. Let me just put it in a new module so that there is no confusion. So I'll cut it and create a new module and paste it here. Perfect. Okay, we are selecting B2 to E9, which is great. Selection.format conditions.delete. So we're deleting any existing conditions that are already available on those cells, which is great. Now we're then saying selection.format conditions.add top 10, but do you see that there is 10 that has been written here? And this is what we want to make dynamic. So what we will do is I will say that the top underscore num is equal to range I2 dot value. Okay, like this. Remember, I2 is the cell that has the number in it. So we're looking at range I2 dot value. And now, rather than writing 10, we can write top underscore anywhere, right? So the process is that we're taking the value that the user has given in I2, we are saving it in a variable called top underscore num, and that becomes the dynamic rank for me. Let us close this. Let's see if it works or not. So if I change it to 1 and I run the code, so if I say macros, you notice only the top 1 is highlighted. But then every time going to the developer tab and selecting macros might, not be the best way to do it. So I will create a shape. So I just create a circle like this. And on this circle, we can right click, go to assign macro, and we can say that select top 10. Now this means that all the user has to do is to write 5 and you get the top 5. You say 10 and you get the top 10. Very cool, right? This is a blended hybrid approach, which means that we did not have to write the entire code ourselves, because that doesn't make sense, right? Why would we want to do that? So what we have done here is we have essentially recorded the entire macro, but we have modified that one single part, which was where we took the value from I2 and we put that value inside the rank like this. This is a very simple example that I've given you, but the same logic can be expanded to do anything and everything that you want to do. Fine. Good. So we have done a lot of VBA as well. And now we want to come to Power Query. Right? But before we do that, I would like to save the file and show you some ready-made examples of how powerful VBA can be. Right? So these are projects that I've done for some of my clients, and I would like to share them with you. Let me just clean up a little bit. So all the windows that we don't require, let me close that. I don't seem to be able to close it, but that's okay. Let me go to files, and I would like to show you this one. Right, so this entire project was done on VBA, and it doesn't seem to open. No problem. Let me close Excel and reopen it. Perfect. It is working now. So Decode Research and Analytics was a private limited company that I had started with two partners in 2018. Now, of course, I'm doing my own thing. But this was a project that we did for a textile company. And their requirement was that they used to have a purchase order system and a vendor master, which they used to operate manually. So if you notice, they used to do all of this work manually. They used to have a list of vendors with them. They used to have the details of each purchase order, which means what is the unit of measurement, what is the quantity, and then they will have to create the invoice manually. So what we have done here was, so if you notice here, they used to create all of this invoice manually, right? What we did for them was we created an entire VBA interface, almost like a pseudo software, which is running on Excel. So you notice that when I click on vendor master, I can see the vendors. I can go to find and select any vendor from here. I can even scroll like this. I can even add or delete a record. In the purchase order, I can type any number. So if I type 2, it tells me that these are the details for the second purchase order. Or I can type 5, gives me details for the fifth purchase order. Once this is done and I want to edit it, I can do that. I can also add a new one or delete it. But if you click on delete, it asks for a password, right? And if you notice, if I don't put the correct password, it doesn't work. So all the checks and balances were kept in place. And if you click on print, then without having to do anything manually, it automatically prints it like this in the correct format that you want it, right? So I hope this example helped you understand how nice this process is, right? VBA can allow you to essentially create these softwares and automate tasks inside an organization. Let me give you one more example. For this, I will need the password. So if you don't mind, I'll just open ABSC 31204. Okay. So I will select a name here. Let's say Abhijit, and I will say 31204. That is the password, everyone. Do you see how beautiful the interface is? It almost looks like a web software. And I click on Begin Survey, and all the details are there. I just see all this. Everything that you see here was created on Visual Basic, right? And it's such a better way of presenting a lot of data, right? Let me give you one final example. This was again a data entry form that we were creating. So I can click to enter. I can put in the ID and the password. I can select my month. And you can see that I have two paths and I can fill in the data. Right? So I'm just writing some numbers here, just at random. And when I click on submit, right, the data gets submitted. Where does it get submitted? Does it go to another server or another database? That is a different matter. But the point is that you can create these beautiful forms in this manner. And let me try and show you one last form as well. Look at this. This is even better because this does not even need Excel at the back end. I mean, there is an Excel file, but you notice that it is floating. It is floating on my screen. That means that you can't even see the Excel file that is at the back. And I can click on proceed. I can put in my date of submission. I can select different records and different options. I can even click on these buttons, right? Like this, and everything just works. Right? So there are 5 parts to this form that we created like this. So this, I hope, gave you an idea of what is the capability of VBA. Now, the thing is that VBA, remember, only works on your local copy of Excel, the desktop version. It will not work on the cloud. On the cloud, we use something called TypeScript, but that's okay. That is something we'll be covering later. Before we do that, now that we have done a lot of data automation, let us also come to, let us continue with automation, and we will also do a little bit of analysis. For this, we are using Power Query and Powerpivot. So let me just write here that in VBA, we can also create user forms, right? Excellent. Let us come back to the problem statement that we have. Let's look at this carefully. I have a folder that has 3 years of data in it. So we have 2013, 2014, and 2015. Each of the 3 files has the same template. So if I open 2013, you can see that. We have a data set with us. Just give me a moment. Let me close this. And okay, so we have a nice data set with us where we have 12 columns, right? And we have the data for a business that is selling in multiple states in the United States. So we have the state and the city, we have the segment, the customer ID, but we do not have the customer name. Where is the customer name? The customer name has been given in a different file. Right? So the customer name has been given in a different file like this. So you can see we have 793 customer names with us. Similarly, you notice that we have the subcategory, but we do not have the category. That category has been given in a different file, which is like this. So there are 3 categories and 17 subcategories. Now, some of you must be thinking, but why is the data not in one place? It seldom is. Any organization that you work with, you will have multiple teams, right? Like the product list will be handled by, let's say, the operations team. The marketing team also has a role to play there. The data for sales, quantity, profit will be handled by marketing and finance. The customer details might probably be handled by HR, right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that it is very seldom that the entire data of an organization can be put in one file. It doesn't make sense, right? Because why would you want to have such a large file with all the data in it? And everybody does not need to have access to the complete data. So there are silos. There are silos because I might have restricted access. That means that I can only see the data for the customer ID. I cannot see the customer name. Let's say I'm working in one department or one sub-function, and I'm not privy to see the customer name. So that's why I can only see the anonymized customer ID and not the customer name. But the problem is that when you want to collate everything and you want to create a dashboard, that becomes difficult because you have to open every file one by one, copy and paste it. Then you have to do VLOOKUP, right? Or some manual work. And I want to show you how all of that work can be avoided. Let's see how we do that. I will open an Excel file first. Right? So we open an Excel file. Now in Excel, I have data, and in data, there is a group called get and transform data. Now, everything that I'm going to show you can be done here. You notice that I can connect to files from a folder. I can connect to different types of databases. I can connect to Microsoft Azure. I can connect to Power BI. I can connect to online services, even some other connectors like SharePoint, big data, so on and so forth. And what is this concept? This is called Power Query, right? So we have done formulas and functions and VBA. This is the third component of Excel called Power Query. But I'm not going to show this to you on Excel. I'm going to show this to you on a tool called Power BI. So Power BI is also a Microsoft tool, but it is not a part of Microsoft Office. So you will have to download it separately. But the good part is that this is completely free of cost. Without having to pay 1 rupee, you can download Power BI, right? Now, why have they made it free? It's a little hard to explain that, but the idea is that every feature, every function, every visualization is available for free. But if you want to share your reports with other people, or if you want to have automatic refresh, if you want to work with very large data sets, that is when you need to have a paid account. But I can say very confidently that, especially as a student, and if you're learning, you don't need to have the paid account. The paid account will cost you 850 rupees per month, but you don't really need to use that. Now, why am I showing you this process of Power Query and Powerpivot on Power BI? They will work on both Excel and Power BI. The reason I want to show it to you on Excel, not show it to you on Excel, is because we will also be creating some data visuals. Now, I can create charts on Excel, but they will not be very powerful. That is what Power BI is very, very good at. And that is the reason I'm showing this on Power BI. But keep in mind that this entire process of combining the file and connecting different files, if you wanted to, you could have done it on Excel as well, right? Okay, let me in fact write it down here. So Power Query plus Power Pivot will work on Excel, it will work on Power BI, and it will also work on the cloud. Right? Basically, it will work online. So it works on all the 3 platforms. Okay. Right. So let me close Excel and we will come to Power BI. Power BI is the #1 BI tool in the market. And if I can just quickly show it to you. Power BI is 5 years and counting. It was introduced in general availability in 2015. So in August 2021, it will be completing 6 years. And in the span of about 5.5 years, it has become the #1 tool in the market. So if you look at the Gartner Magic Quadrant, you will see that Power BI is the #1 BI tool. This is the latest report from February 2021. And Tableau is #2. And of course, you have many other tools in the market. So we have Click, ThoughtSpot, Oracle BI, SAS BI, SAP, IBM Cognos, Google, right, and many others. But Power BI undisputed is #1 in the market. It is growing the fastest. And 97% of Fortune 500 companies are using Power BI. I've taken all this data from the official website. So these are all verified numbers. Right? Just like till a few years back, Excel used to be a must-know skill. Right? You have to learn Excel. Any job that you're applying for, you have to know Excel, right? On all job descriptions, it is written that you need to work on Microsoft Excel. Similarly, now we have started to see that in organizations, Even Power BI has started to become like that. It has become almost a necessity to learn Power BI. Let us see how we can work with it. The first thing I will do is I will click on my folder and I will select the path. So I'm just selecting this path, Control C, where the 3 files are there. We come back to Power BI and I will click on Get Data. And you can see there are multiple data connectors that are available. And if we click on More, you will find that there are about 100 different types of connections available here. This is a very large list. And for now, what do we want? We want to connect to a folder. So we select that and click on Connect. The folder path we already have with us. And I will click on OK. You can see that we have 2013, 2014, and 2015. We click on Combine and Transform. And what happens now is that it will ask us which sheet do we want to select. So I want to select sheet number 1. There is only one sheet in my workbook. But if there were multiple sheets, you could have chosen which sheet you want. So I select sheet number 1 and I click on OK. And you know what? That is it. That is all that you have to do, nothing else. The moment you select the folder and you click on Combine, it will automatically open a new window called the Power Query Editor. Please remember, everyone, every single thing that I'm doing, you could do this on Excel as well. Why am I showing it to you on Power BI? Because I want to create visualizations as well. Once the data has been collated and it has been analyzed, I want to create some dynamic dashboards and some data visualizations. Okay. Now, if you look on the right side, you can see that there are some steps that have been given here. This language is called M, right? So let me quickly go back to Google and show you what this is. As you can see, Power Query is a data prepping tool. You can call it data prep, data wrangling, ETL, whatever you want to call it, data cleaning. But the basic idea is that it is allowing you to connect, extract, transform, and load the data from a wide variety of data sources. Not just Excel files and text and CSV files, but other things as well. What is so special about it? You can access hundreds of data sources. You can reshape it. That means you can do modification and hundreds of data sources. You even have a software development kit available. You can even connect to APIs, application programming interfaces. So if you directly want to connect to a website or some other platform like SAP, you can do that. There are more than 300 data transformations available. And the best part is you have some AI tools as well and no coding required. That's the best part. You don't need to learn how to code. Power Query is available not just on Excel and Power BI. It is available on Excel, Power BI. It is available on CDS, which is Common Data Service. It is available on Power Automate. So without learning SQL, you can still use ETL using Power Query. And it also works on SQL Server. So different Microsoft products all use the same concept. So what you're going to learn today will help you not just learn one Microsoft product, but learn 5 different Microsoft products. Okay, let's come back. But how do we even know that the 3 files have been combined? If I open the first column, you notice that the 3 files have been combined successfully, and it is telling us 2013, 2014, and 2015. How cool is that? And what are the steps that have been written at the backend? You notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps have been given. And if I go to the advanced editor, this, everyone, is how M looks. The language called M, this is how it looks. Okay. Now, is this a programming language? Not really. Is it like Excel? Not really. M is a very different language. You have to learn it independently. Of course, there will be some similarity with other programming languages and some similarity with Excel. But don't make the mistake of thinking that it is like either of them. It is its own entity. You have to learn it separately. Now, what are the steps that have been performed to combine the data from the three files into a single file? The first step is that I went to the folder and I took all the files from that folder. Right? So far, so good. It's very simple. The next thing that we are doing is we want to make sure that we are not selecting accidentally any hidden files in that folder. It is possible, right, that there were some hidden files in that folder. So we're making sure not to make that mistake. That is why we are filtering out all the hidden files. We are only looking at the visible files. Third step, we are creating a new column called transform file. Why are we doing that? Because I want to take the content from the file. See, right now we only have the name of the file, but we also want to take the content of the file, right? So we're taking the content of the file. After that, I'm renaming my column from name to source.name. I need to do that because I also need to know from which file is this row coming. Otherwise, how will I know which row is coming from which file? Then I remove all the other data which we don't need. So we don't need data like the extension, the date access, the date modified, the date created. We just need the name of the file. We also need the content. Then I expand the data so it gives me the entire content. And I change the type of each column so that text, date, text, quantity, profit, sales are numbers like this. These are the 7 steps that have been performed automatically, but it is good to learn how it has been done, because if you don't learn it, then you will not really be an advanced user and you will not be able to modify it. Now, is this like VBA in the sense that we are automating our tasks? Somewhat, not exactly, but somewhat. Because the language we're using is very different. But the interesting part here is that it's much simpler than working with VBA. On the left side, we have the query name. So I'll just call it fact_sales. That means I'm saying that this is a fact table and this is my sales data set. We click on close and apply. And the data now gets combined into one single file called fact sales. So remember, it is not 13, 14, 15 anymore. It is just giving me one single data set called fact_sales. Okay, very cool. But how do I combine the 4th file now? So if I make a card and I put my sales value in it, you can see that the total is 1.56 million. But the moment I come back to my folder and I add another file, so I'm taking 2016 and I'm adding it here. How do I refresh it? We simply have to go back to Power BI and we click on refresh. One click, and you notice it just takes about 5 seconds and it automatically analyzes that one more file has got added and the number changes to 2.3 million. Very cool. Okay. Now, before I show you the more technical aspects of how to combine the customer name and how to take the category, let us also create some visuals and then we'll go back to the combining of other files in it, right? Now, this is an AI feature. It is called Q&A, which is question and answer. What it does is it allows me to ask a question about my data, and without having to write any formulas, no pivot table, no sort and filter, nothing is required. It will automatically give you the result that you're looking at. Let me show you how it works. If you have never seen this earlier, prepare for your mind to be blown. It is a beautiful feature, and this will really make you rethink the way we analyze data, right? And the way we visualize data. My first simple question is, what is my sales? Within a second, it tells me that Havish, your sales is 2.3 million. Now, some of you must be thinking that, okay, but this is very simple. I mean, you just wanted to look at the sales amount. What if I say that, what is my sales and profit. So now very smartly, it is telling me that Havish, your sales and profit is 22,97,000 and 2.86 lakhs. Much better. Now, the moment I say that I want to see the sales and profit, but I only want to see it for New York, it now only tells me that for New York, it is 3.1 lakh and 74,000. Isn't this amazing? No formulas, no sort and filter. You can just ask a question and it gives you the result like this. Let's continue. If I don't write for New York and I say by state, what will happen? It will show you the sales and profit for all the state like a scatter chart, which is amazing. You can see that California is the highest in both sales and profit. New York is also very high on sales and profit. So you have both the East Coast and the West Coast. And then you have many other numbers. But you see this, there are a lot of states that are below zero. That means that Colorado is 32,000 sales but negative profit. This is the worst one. Texas is a quite large state. It is the third largest when it comes to sales, 1.7 lakhs. But when it comes to profit, it is negative 25. So I'm incurring a loss in Texas. Okay, let me ask a different question. I will say, show me my sales by my state as a map. How amazing is that? It will automatically create a map for you. Why are these bubbles of different sizes? Because it is relative to the sales amount. So if the sales is smaller, then the size is smaller. If the sales is larger, then the size is larger. Very simple, right? And if I say for, okay, for my consumer segment, you notice that it now only shows you the data for the consumer segment like that, right? Now we have created a map. Let me also put a border and an outline. So a border and a shadow, right? Let's do that. Next to this, I will create a slicer, which is this one. And in the slicer, we will keep our region. Now this means that if I click on central, it will only show me central US, east, south, and west. How amazing is that? Now, of course, the question is, but how did these get connected to each other? That's the beauty of it. You don't have to bother. Every visual that you create will automatically get connected to each other. So you don't have to really write any formula or even apply any steps. It just works, right, automatically. And obviously, there are many other questions that you can ask, but I've given you an idea. Like this, there are many other types of questions you can ask. So the entire process of analysis, visualization, and insights becomes much easier. So Power BI is a BI tool because it can do everything. It can automate the task using Power Query. It can analyze it using these features. It can visualize it with so many different visuals available. There are more than 200 visualizations available, and it can provide an insight as well. Now, some of you must be thinking, but Havish, where is the insight? Like, this is just a chart. It is not telling me why this happened, right? Let me show you how we can do that. On a new page, I will create a column chart. And on the column chart, I will keep my order date and my sales amount. Now, you can see that from 2013 to 2014, there was a decline that happened. From 14 to 15, there was an increase, and 15 to 16, there was another increase. Now, I would like to know as a business that from 13 to 14, there was a small decline. From 4.84, it became 4.70. What was the reason behind this decline? Was there one country that did not do well? Was there one state that did not do well? Was there one segment that underperformed, right? How do we find all of these things? I can simply right click, okay, and say analyze. it automatically detects, this is also an AI feature, it automatically detects that there is a decrease in my data. So the moment I say decrease, it will tell me that, Havish, there is a 2.83% decrease from 2013 to 2014, right? Now, if you go through them, you will notice that it is trying to tell us what could be the possible reasons behind it. For example, if I look at year and subcategory, it is telling me that from 13 to 14, right, from 4.84 lakhs to 4.7 lakh, bookcases showed a growth. So you notice that bookcases, accessories, copiers, they all showed a growth. But look at this. Machines was a subcategory that showed a decline of 34,000, which is quite a big number, right? So there was a 55% decline in machines, and that was the reason, one of the reasons behind the decline that happened, right? Like this. Now, how is it doing all of this? This is all AI. It is happening automatically. And there are different types of charts that you can create here. So I can create a scatter chart. Green is the subcategories that are growing. Red is the one that have degrown. You can also make a column chart. You can also make a ribbon chart. So you can see the change that is happening, right? Like this. How cool is that? In addition to this, I can also right click and say summarize. Summarize means that it will automatically create a summary telling me that there was a 51% increase from 13 to 16. The sales has increased for the last 4 years. So from 13 to 16, there has been a total increase. And the jump has been from 4.84, which is 4.84, to 7.33. And what is that jump? That jump is 51.56. How cool is that? And all of this that you see is dynamic. Now, when I say it is dynamic, what I mean to say is that so when it is dynamic, what that means is that, let's say I make a map, okay? So I'll make a map and keep the state in it, state, and the sales value in it, right? So far, so good. Let me also make this a little larger so you can see it clearly. If I click on any one state, let's say on the East Coast, we have New York. Do you see what is happening? My chart is also getting updated and my results are also changing. So it is telling me that in the case of New York, there was a 44% increase. If I look at California, there was a 60% increase. How cool is that? I can also drag and select a region like this. So I can see that for this particular region, this was the increase that happened, 96%, like this. Right? So very cool. Okay, let me see what else can I show you. Before we look at more analysis, let us also look at the combining of different files. We have the customer ID, but I don't have the customer name. So we want to add that. So what we will do here is, I will go to Excel and on my desktop, we will select Power BI. I will click on Superstore model and I will select my ID and name. Remember, this is the file that has 793 customer names and the corresponding ID, right? So I'll click. We select the sheet and click on transform data, like we did earlier. When I click on transform data, Power Query will open up. Let me call it, this is a dimension, so I'll call it dim underscore ID. And once we have done that, now we can click on first row as headers. See, there's a small problem. The heading is not coming correctly. It is showing me CID and name, not which should be the headers, right? Not column 1 and column 2. So I will click on first row as headers. And the second challenge you will notice is that the name is not correct. In my data set, it is coming as pass underscore Darren, comma Darren. It should be Darren Paz, Filina Ober, Make Brown, like that. Now, in Excel, if you had to do this, you would have written a formula. But it's not really that simple. You still have to construct a formula. But in Power Query, we have this beautiful tool called column from examples. So when I go to add column, I can click on column from examples. What does that mean? I will only have to give it a sample. And once I give it the sample, it will automatically understand what is the pattern that I want. And it will repeat that for me. Let's see how we do this. I click on column from examples. Now it asks me to give a sample value. Let us do that. So I will call it Darren space parse. It doesn't work, but let's not worry. Let's give one more sample. So I give it Filina space Ober. And the moment I give it 2 samples, it is smart enough to automatically give me all the results. So if you look at it carefully, the formula is coming like this. And the best part is that this is automated. We did not have to write the formula. It created the formula automatically. I will click on OK. Now we can delete the old name because we don't need that. And this, everyone, becomes my new name. Let's also go through the formula and try to see if we are able to understand how it worked. So this is the formula that we have written, everyone, or rather not written, but it has been created automatically. It's a little difficult, but let's try to deconstruct it because it's important as an advanced user to see how this works in case you need to modify it in the future. Okay. So what we're doing is I am basically doing a text.combine, which makes sense. I'm taking the surname and the first name, and then I'm combining it. And if you look at the order, I'm taking the first part before, the second part before, and I'm taking the first part after. So 0 is the surname, which I'm taking after. 1 is the first name, which I'm taking before, right? Right. But how am I breaking it into 2 parts? I'm using splitter.split text by delimiter. This is an inbuilt function which is there. And I'm using the comma to split the data. That basically means that in my original data, we had Darren parse and a comma in the middle. So I'm using splitter.split text by delimiter to break that into 2 parts. So the 0 part will be parse, the 1 part will be Darren, and then I'm reversing it. And we are getting the result like this. Okay. Now I can remove it. I'm sorry, let me go to the last step. And we've already removed it. Perfect. Okay. Now, the next thing that we want to do is to close it. So close and apply. And you can see that there are 2 tables that we have with us. We have the fact underscore sales table, and we also have the dim underscore ID table, 2 tables with us, right? Now, if we try to make any visualization, if I try to make a table, or rather, let's keep a Q&A, right? So if I keep let's start with a table. That would be easy. So we start with a table, and I will keep my customer name, and I will keep my sales value. You notice that, yes, we are able to show both of these columns, which are coming from different files. Remember, there are 5 files right now. We have the customer file, we have the sales for 4 years with us. And very nicely, we are able to combine everything into a single file. But that visual is not working correctly. It is showing me the grand total, 22,97,200 everywhere, which is clearly not correct, right? Now, why is this working? Because there is no connection between these 2 tables. And this, everybody, is where we will learn how to work with Powerpivot. We want to create a data model. Remember, we have done the ETL, we have combined the data, but we still haven't connected them. How do we do that? We go to the modeling view. And here we say that the CID on the left table is the same as the customer ID on the right table. So the CID can be dragged. And as you can see, there is a connection, or what we rather call a relationship, between the left table and the right table. And this one means that in the table on the left, every customer ID is unique. It is only appearing one time. But in the table on the right, it is many. That is the asterisk, which means that each customer probably has purchased multiple times from us. And the moment you create a relationship, you notice that the results come. How cool is that? So 5 different files have been combined into a single file using Power Query and Powerpivot, right? Okay, so far so good. The next thing that we want to do is to do some detailed insights. See, I have all these charts with me and I can create my pie chart, scatter chart, all of that. But what if I want to do something more advanced, like looking at the quarter over quarter change? For example, I will make a column chart. We will keep the order date in it, and we will also keep the sales value in it, right? And we want to see the quarters. We don't want to see the year. So I can click on the expand button, and now it will show me all the 16 quarters, 4 quarters for 4 years. Let's also put a border and a shadow. And let me also select the data label so we can see the change that is happening. We can see that from 74,000, it became 87,000. From 87, it became 144. 144 to 180, then it dropped to 69. Now, this is great, but the question is, how do you know what is the change that has happened? That means from 74,000 to 87,000, there has been an increase, right, of 12,000. But what is that exact difference? What is that exact delta that has happened? To do that, we will first have to create a date table. Now, why do we need to create a date table? Because we are doing a date calculation. If you Google it, if you say date table in Power BI, you will see that there are many articles and videos explaining you why and how you create a date table. Why do you need to create a date table? Because we are doing a date calculation, right? So I'll also write it here. So Power Query, we used to combine files, okay? And we used Powerpivot, which is the model, to create a relationship. Right? Okay. Now we are creating a date table, which is a must for date calculations. Right? Like this. As you can see, it is not something that I am telling you to do. You have to create a date table. There's no choice. How do you make one? We go back to Power BI. We click on the data view, right? And we can see that there are 2 tables that we already have. We have the dimension table, that is the ID, and we also have the sales table. But what we would like to do here is to create another table. So we click on new table. And this, everyone, is the first example on tax, where we're using data analysis expressions. This is not Excel formulas. This is not M like Power Query. It is not VBA. It is a completely different language. But DAX also works on Excel. So everything that I'm showing you right now, Power Query, relationship, everything will work on Excel as well. Just keep that in mind. So I click on new table and I will say that my date table is equal to, my date table is equal to a calendar. So we're creating a list of dates where the starting date is the minimum order date, everyone, and the maximum date is the maximum shipping date, which makes sense, right? Because the date has to be between the first order date and the last shipping date. What will it do? It will give you a list of dates from the 3rd of January 2013. This is the date on which the first order was placed. And if I saw the data, it gives you the 5th of January 2017, which is the last shipping date that we have on record. Let me also change it from date and time into date so that it becomes easier. But how do you do calculations here? You will have to create another relationship. This time the relationship will be between what? The order date and the date, like this. Right? So everyone, now we have two relationships between the customer ID and the CID. We have the relationship between the order date and the date that we have created. Let's go back to the report. But you notice that the report is not working. The reason is that because we have created a proper date table, I cannot use the original order date anymore. So we'll remove it and we will replace it with the proper date table, right? Like this. Works perfectly. And now I'll show you the cool stuff. How can you see the change from quarter to quarter? We will go to new measure. Again, we're using a DAX measure or DAX calculation. And in the formula bar, we will write, let me increase the size. We will say that my QOQ change is equal to what? So I will create a variable and I'll call this my previous underscore quarter. So what is the previous quarter equal to? The previous quarter is equal to calculate the sum of my sales, right? So I'm calculating the sum of my sales, but not for the current quarter, but for the previous quarter. So I will write previous quarter. There's a function called previous quarter. Very cool. And we will select the date from here, from the date table. Now that I have the previous quarter value with me, which means I have 87,000, sorry, I have 74,000. What do I want to do? I want to do 87 minus 74 divided by 74. That is how you will look at the change that has happened, right? Current quarter minus previous quarter divided by the previous quarter. So I will return the result, which will be a simple divide, where I'm dividing the current quarter, which is sum of sales, and the sum of sales minus the previous quarter divided by the previous quarter. And what this will do is, this will give you a result. Let me also change it into a percentage. So when I press enter, there is a new calculation created, a new field created called previous quarter, rather QOQ change. And when I put the QOQ change in my tooltip, you notice that it is only showing you the sales, but if you take your mouse, obviously for the first quarter, there is no base value, so it will show you 74,000. But for the next one, it shows you 16, or rather 0.16. Let me change it to a percentage. Right? Okay, it tells you there was a 16% increase that happened, 65%, 25%, and there was a decrease of 61%. How cool is that? Right? So you have actually managed to do a calculation on a data model using DAX, right? Which is what we have done here. This is how my code looks. I can also copy the code and go to a website called DAX Formatter, which will automatically format the code for me. Right, like this. So it looks much cleaner now. There are these are not rules that have to be followed, but there are certain conventions. There are certain practices that we follow. That there should be a space before and after the parentheses. There should be a space after the comma, and then you should use tabs whenever you're writing a new line, right? Like this. Okay. Let's see what else I can show you on Power BI. So in addition to the inbuilt visualizations you have, so you have all these visuals with you. Sorry. In addition to all these visuals that you have, you can also connect to R and Python, as you can see, R and Python. And you can also go to more visuals from where you can download more than 200 visualizations that are available. So when I click on more visuals, there is a marketplace that is available. So just like you have the Android and the iOS marketplace, you have different visuals available like this, and there are a lot of them. So I will select something called a donut. And you can see here that we have the advanced donut visual. I will click on add. It will only take about 5 seconds. And once the visual gets added, I can add up to 3 levels in it. Now you must be wondering, but how is it better than a pie chart? Let me prove to you. So I will keep my segment and my sales value. I will also keep my category. Okay, I don't have my category, but I'll keep my subcategory and I'll keep my region like this. So what it does is that it creates a dynamic donut chart, which means that if I click on West, it will show me the 3 segments within West. And if I click on, let's say, Home Office, it will show me the subcategories within Home Office, right? Like this. Very cool, right? This is only one example. Like this, there are many, many other examples that are available. And because you can connect Power BI to R and Python both, this is really infinite. I mean, the number of things that you can do with it, right? In fact, let me try and see if I can show you one example on that as well. You'll have to give me a moment to find where it is. And I'm surprised that it's not here. So okay, so this is what I want to show you. Okay, so in this example, I want to show you that we have created 2 visuals. We have the first one, which is a simple column chart, and we have a pie chart. So the visual is nothing fantastic or different, but this is an illustration to show you that we can use, as you can see, let me increase the, how do I do that? Okay, never mind. So you can see that I'm using Matplotlib, which is one of the most popular visualization libraries available in Python. And I'm essentially creating a plot using my sales region and putting a red color. For example, if I change this red to blue and I run it, you see that I'm essentially using a Python code and a Python library to present a visualization like this. And if I click on the edit script button, this will open it in an external IDE. So I'm working on Visual Studio Code. So you can see that basically this is how I'm connecting Python to Power BI, right? Like this. For a lot of you, this might be quite complicated, but that's okay. I mean, not all of us will need to work on it, but I hope you understand the basic idea that these are the libraries that we are importing, right? This is my the wrapper, which is allowing me to connect Python to Power BI. And once we've done that, we have essentially written the code like this, right? Okay. Right. So like this one visualization, there are many, many others that are available. So if I can take you all to my website and I go to dashboard samples, you can see that we have a beautiful Power BI dashboard that I've created where there are charts on top of another chart. I can also make it dynamic. So basically you can interact with it right now. So you can just go to my website and have a look at all of this. Right? And there are different types of dashboards that I've created. Right? Like this is a marketing analytics problem where you're trying to find the customer clusters. Right? Like this. Very cool, right? Okay. So of course, I can't even attempt to show you everything because there is just so much in Power BI, and it's a beautiful tool. And since it's a fairly long learning journey, you have to make sure to start learning it very early, right? Because it is going to become a must tool going forward. There is, in case you are interested, there are certifications available for both of them. So for Excel, there is you basically clear your Excel master. So you have to create different levels of examination. So first you give your basic Excel, then you become an Excel expert, then you become an Excel master. And then for Power BI, there is only one certification, which is DA 100, which is Power BI, a Data Analyst Associate. You have to pay money. So I think Excel is about 3,000, Power BI is about 5,600. And these are very tough examinations. But then, of course, I have preparatory courses. So I have online courses in which I teach you how to learn Excel and how to learn Power BI. I'll share all the details later. Right? But the point is that from wherever you're learning, whether it's from me or from YouTube or from a book, you have to learn these tools. No matter where you will end up working, you have to work with both Excel and Power BI. Right? Okay, so let's close this. Okay, let me clean up my system a little bit. So what we have done up till now is we have seen formulas and functions, we have seen Visual Basic, we have seen Power Query, we have seen Powerpivot. And now I want to show you the last two things. One is JavaScript and the other is TypeScript. Right? Let us look at TypeScript first, or let's look at JavaScript first. So I will open an Excel file. There are add-ins that are available on Excel. Add-ins is essentially additional features and functionality that has been created. For example, if I go to Insert and I click on Add-ins, you can see that there is a store available, just like we have a store on Power BI. Here also you have a store available. And what do you have on the store? You have many, many different things. There are about 500 of these add-ins available. In fact, I also have two add-ins available here. So if you type my name, I have a swap case and I have a stopwatch. Let me show you how it works. So the stopwatch essentially is a stopwatch like this, right? So what it does is, this is a window that is appearing on your Excel sheet. And let's say you're working on a project, right? And you want to time yourself. You want to see how long it took you. Now, one option is to open the stopwatch on your mobile, or you can open the stopwatch, on your system. But that means that you need to have, you need to see your phone, or you need to open another application, correct? What we're doing here is we are essentially creating a window inside Excel, and I can just click on play, and it starts to play, and I can continue doing my work, and I can pause it or restart it whenever I want. So it's a nifty tool. It's not like a very crazy advanced tool. It's a very nifty tool that we have. The question is, how has this been created, right? Like, is it Excel formulas, Power Query, Power Pivot? Obviously not. What you see, everybody, is a web page, right? This is like a web page in the sense that when I open Google, you can see that this is a web page, which means that there is some script that is running at the backend. So if I right click on Google search and I click on inspect, I can see this entire code behind it, right? So I can see this part which is saying Google search. And very smartly, if I go to Google search and I say that I want to change this label into just give me a moment. The value. Okay. So I'm changing the value to Havish search. You notice that I'm literally changing the web page because the web page is nothing. It's just a HTML code, right? Which has some CSS for styling and some JavaScript for automation and some dynamic elements. That is exactly what we are doing with this window as well. So if I right click and I click on inspect, you will notice that this is the code that is behind this. Right? I hope that makes sense, everyone. And if you look at the code here, right? Let me just go full screen so you can see it better. You can see that this is the code that is running behind it. So this is JavaScript. And if you look here, this is my library that I'm using called the Office UI Fabric, right? And what else can I show you here? So this is a link to my website, right? Like this. So basically, this is what is running. This is what is displaying that window that I showed you. Now, like this, there are many other types of add-ins available. So if I can show you on Get Add-ins, there's a complete store available. There are many, many different types of add-ins. So let me show you the web video player. Okay, I'll click on Add and continue. I don't think I need to explain what this is. This is a video player, which means that I can go to YouTube and I can take any video. So I have a channel on YouTube where I have over 560 videos on topics ranging from Excel to PowerPoint, Power BI, Power Query, Tableau, Python, right? There are videos that are only 60 seconds. There are videos that are 2 hours long, right? So there's something for everyone that has been given here. Let me just take a video here. So let's say Introduction to Power BI. I can copy the URL, come back. I can paste it here. And I can even say that it should start at, let's say 0500, right? And I say set video. How cool is that? When I click on play, it starts to play at the 5th minute. So this is literally a web page that is being displayed inside my Excel window. Right? So I'll not get into details, but this has all been created on JavaScript. So developers like me and other people, we essentially write the code on JavaScript and we publish it to the App Store, and we're able to find all the add-ins. Like we are able to create the add-ins and publish it on the store like this. Right? Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is TypeScript. So let me also write here. So Python plus R plus custom visualizations, right? Okay, so we have Python plus R with custom visualizations on Power BI. I can also, what else did we cover? Yeah, so on Excel, I showed you JavaScript, which is used for add-ins, and now we are going to do TypeScript. So TypeScript is a programming language that is created, that has been created and is maintained by Microsoft. So if I may show you, TypeScript is essentially based on JavaScript, and it is JavaScript with a few modifications in it, and it was developed and is maintained by Microsoft. Right? Now, then there are many frameworks available. So there are frameworks like, if I can just type JavaScript frameworks. Right? You can see that there are many frameworks available. You have Vue, you have Angular, you have Next, you have Express. So these have been created by either some big organizations or by individual developers. Like Vue is created by Ivangu, right? If you look at Angular, It is a TypeScript-based framework by Google, right? Then you have what else? React. So React is a JavaScript framework that is created by Facebook, right? I'll not get into details of what frameworks are. I mean, if you're interested, you can Google it and find it out on your own, right? But we also have something called Office Fabric. Right? And this is a user experience framework created by Microsoft, which we are using here, right? So this is the JavaScript framework that we are using essentially. And obviously on the documentation, you have everything that has been explained here, right? How it works. All right. Now, why are we using TypeScript? See, TypeScript is essentially VBA for the internet because Excel Online is the future, right? Because Microsoft wants people to use more of online rather than work on Excel desktop. And of course, on the cloud, you need to have a lot of automation. There's a lot of requirement. And to be able to do that, you cannot use VBA. And it was not even possible to put VBA on the internet because VBA is a very old language and it was created at a time when the internet was just starting, right? And it has a lot of limitations in it. So it would have been impossible to do that. So what we're doing here is to use TypeScript. Let me give you an example. Like I showed you earlier, I'll do the same example. We will say name, and I would write sales. We will say A, and then B, and then C. Then we have 10 and 30 and 20, right? I'll just do 2 steps. So let me also copy it here. We will click on automate, right? Now automate, I think is only available for business users of Excel. So you might not have it. Even though I was reading recently that automate has been made as a general availability, that all Excel users have it, but I'm not 100% sure about that. You will have to check that, right? But anyway, if you are working in an organization, then you, in all likelihood, should have automate with you, right? So we essentially go to automate and we click on automate and we say record action. So this process is very similar to recording a VBA code. So I click on record actions. You see that the recording has started. I will select. I will make it center aligned. I will select, make it bold, and maybe just write the total, which is equal to the sum of these 3. Right? And let's make this center aligned as well. And we will also put a color here. Right? And we stop the recording. Right? First, let us check if it will work or not. Right? So I will first remove all the format. Change the numbers as well. So let's make it T and E and F. Right? Watch this. I click on run and it works. So far, so good. This is what we did with VBA as well. But what we would like to do now is to see how the code has been recorded. So when I click on edit, you will see that this is the TypeScript that has been recorded. Okay? Obviously, I mean, it would not be 100% clear in the first go, but if you look at the flow should make sense, right? So we are looking at an entry point. So I'm looking at Excel script workbook. So I'm basically saying that I am working on an Excel file. What is my selected sheet? The active worksheet. So my active worksheet, which is sheet 8 right now, is my selected worksheet. This is a comment which is in the green color. That means that in my A1 to B4, what did I do? I basically did a horizontal alignment, which is center. After that, in A1, B4, I set my indent level. Then I made it bold. And you can see the idea. You get the idea, no? I wrote this formula. Then again, I did a center. And after that, I put this color. Now, if you notice carefully, I can change this hex code. So if I write, let's say 2577CE, right? And I run it once again, the color changes. This is how you can modify the TypeScript code that has been recorded. Right? This incidentally is my brand color, right, which you find here. This is essentially JavaScript. It's a slight variation called TypeScript, but the way you write it is similar to JavaScript. So when you learn one, you are essentially learning the other one as well. In the future, TypeScript is going to become very important because this is how you do automation on the cloud, right? And this entire area of RPA, right, which I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of. So robotic process and automation is a massive area that industry is growing a lot. And there was an article that came recently which said that just give me a minute. Do you see this? This article came a week back, which said that by next year, 2022, due to automation, in an attempt to save cost, 30 lakh jobs will be slashed, right? And the reason I wanted to open this article is to show you that, I mean, that is what is the impact that automation is going to have on different industries, right? Especially obviously certain industries will have a bigger impact, certain might not. But then this is what is going to happen, right? Because tools are going to get so much more powerful that the entire process of making a pivot and creating filters and writing formulas is not needed. Anybody can open Power BI, open the Q&A and ask a question, right? So you have to be prepared for these tools that are going to come up. Like there is another tool called Power Apps, which is a Microsoft tool. So like you have Power BI, we have Power Automate, and we also have Power Apps. What Power Apps does is, if I can quickly show you, it allows you to create applications with what is called low code, right? See, there are two terms here. So we have no code and we have low code. No code means that no coding is required. Like in Power Query, we don't have to do any coding. Low code means that with minimum coding, you can still do a lot. So if I show you Power Apps, on Power Apps, I will just create a blank template, not a blank template. I'll use one template. Let's say my budget tracker, right? This, everybody, is an application. Like you create an application on Android or you create an application on Swift for Apple, for iOS. We can create applications. And the best part is that even if you're not a coder, you can still work on it with minimal coding, right? So if you notice carefully, everything that you see here, this is an app that I've created. Let me just close it once. So there are different screens here. There are different elements that I've created like this. I can connect to different data sets, and everything that you see the formula bar and you see these properties. With minimal coding, you'll be able to do all of this. See, if you want to code, nobody will stop you from doing that. You notice that there is some form of coding that is required here, right? Like this. But the best part is that this coding is very similar to how you do it on Excel. This language is another language called PowerFX. So not to confuse you too much, it is called PowerFX, which is a low-code programming language. These are very new topics, so don't worry if you have never heard of them. As you can see, it was announced in 2021. It just came a few months back. But this is the future, right? Low-code programming language is based on Excel, which means that if you know Excel well, you will not have a lot of difficulty learning PowerFX. But it is also very powerful. So if you want to use it as a professional with the entire set of features, you'll be able to do that as well, right? Okay. And yeah, so this is low code. So, it's a combination of learning different things. It's not that, like I said in the beginning, you have all these things. Let me in fact add PowerFX as well. It's not that you have to learn everything at the same time. Choose the right balance, right? Depending on what type of jobs you want to apply for and what type of career path you want to follow. So not because I have showed you everything, it means that you have to stop doing everything else and focus on it. But then depending on what type of function you'll be working in, you have to decide what is important and what is not important. Right. All right. So if you're interested in reading more about these things, you can go to my website and on havishmconsulting.com. And on the website, you will have, like I said earlier, there are podcasts that I have with some senior business leaders from around the world. I have different courses available for all of these topics. So as of now, I have 29 courses. There are 17 courses on Excel, Google Sheets. Then there are 2 courses on PowerPoint, 3 courses on Power BI, 2 courses on Python, 4 courses on Python, 1 course on R, 1 course on 9. So basically, this is what you essentially need to be prepared with when you're applying for jobs. Not to say that all of you have to learn everything, absolutely not. Maybe if you're in finance, you don't need to learn Tableau, for example. Maybe you don't want to learn R if you don't want to get into areas which require data science, right? But then I feel that at least a little bit of knowledge of Python is super important. So the final thing that I would say is that not knowing what your background is and what type of jobs you'll be applying for, I would say that the 3 things you need to know is Excel, you have to master it. Power BI, you have to master it. And Python, you need to have a very high level overview, right? Not a very detailed overview, but a very high level overview. Right? Yeah. Right. So, Ishan, that would be all from my side. If there's anything you would like me to add.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Havish. This was a really informative session. And first of all, it was quite gradual. And I didn't really, like, I never noticed that from Excel when I went to Power BI and when I went to JavaScript, it was really gradual. And it didn't feel like anything is out of my purview. Despite being a student who has never done computers in his life, I've been a student of economics, but it was quite comprehensive, and it was like quite well put. So,
Thank you, Ishan.
yeah. So there are some questions which were there. So shall I pose them?
You can tell me because I can't see the questions. You can ask me. I'll give the answer.
Sure. First of all, a quick update for all the attendees. If you have any questions, the comment box is open. You can post any question that you like, and we read it out to Havish, and Havish will answer it right away. Cool. So Havish, the first question is, first of all, just 1 minute. Yeah. So when you use the len formula, so this is my question particularly. So can we substitute the len formula with the reference that you use? Yeah, substituting it with countif or countifs. So any advantage that len gives over countifs or countif? For example, counting the number of a particular entry.
Sure. So countif will only count different cells, but if you want to count the characters inside a cell, you have to use length. Countif cannot calculate the number of characters inside a cell.
Okay, so like for you said for example, you said the criteria that if there are 10, so okay, if countif the number of characters equal to 10, so anyway.
Okay, so if you write equal to countif, and then I select my range, right? And then I say that my criteria is that the length of this should not be equal to 10. This is what you were saying, right?
Yeah.
So the problem is that this doesn't work, and it's a little hard to explain why this will not work. But countif cannot work because you can't have the range in the criteria where you're selecting B5 to B18 at the same time. You can give it a shot, so you can. And see, this is very important. Just because I'm telling you, no, this will not work, doesn't mean you should not even try. You know, when people tell me that, Havish, this is not the correct approach, or the answer is already coming, I always try to improve it. I always try to try 5 different ways of getting to the same result, because that is how you understand topics in more detail. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Any other question, Ishan?
Yeah. Yes. So there was one more reference that you made about this unique function, right?
Okay.
So what I used to do was that I used to use remove duplicates, and the shortcut was Alt plus A plus N.
Right.
Yeah, for getting the unique, like the unique characters. So anyway, unique would help me more than remove duplicates.
Absolutely. I mean, let me just come to that example. If you want to do remove duplicate, then you'll have to copy it, then you'll have to paste it somewhere, right? For example, I'll have to paste it here. And once I've done that, then I'll again have to go to data and then click on remove duplicate, right? It saves that entire effort for you, right? So it becomes automated where you can just write a function and you don't have to do remove duplicate every time. Because if you do it manually and tomorrow you add one more name, then again you will have to remove that, repeat that process. But if you use a function, then it will happen automatically.
Okay, sure. So, I'll ask the next question.
Yeah.
So, one question is that how can I summarize two pivot tables? Like how to summarize two pivot tables?
Through a relationship. So what I showed you in Power BI, if you remember, we created a relationship between two of them. That is how you can connect two pivot tables together. Okay. So let me give you an example. Right? A quick example, everyone. So what I'm doing here is I'm writing the region where I'm writing India. And in India, we have, let's say, two cities. So I have UP and MP. And then I'm also writing the US of A, and I'm writing, let's say, New York, and I'm writing California, right? So this is my state. Now, let's say we also have a second data set, which has the state and the sales value. And maybe these are coming a few times, like this. And I'm just putting the same number, it doesn't matter. Now, if you want to make a single pivot table which has all the three columns, what we will have to do is select it, go to insert, and then make a table. Okay. Let's make a table and let's select the headers. And we're going to call this table as my region. And we will select the second table. We'll repeat the same process and we will call it the sales value. Right? Now, when you make a pivot table, you will have to be sure. Don't just click on insert and pivot and press OK. You have to select this option called data model. And once you select the data model, what will happen is that even though we only made one pivot, you notice that the data from both my tables are coming together on the right side. Now, this means that I can select the region from one table and I can select the sales value from another table. But there's a catch. The catch is that you will not get the correct answer. It will not work properly because there is no connection between them, between the two columns. To create a connection, we go to Powerpivot and we go to manage. Exactly what I showed you in Power BI, where we created a line between CID and customer ID. Here as well, I can do the same thing. I can go to my diagram view and I will create a connection, which is a relationship between my state and my state. Same thing, one is to many, right? Once you have done this, you notice that without needing to make anything else, I'm able to create one single pivot where the data is coming from two different tables like this. Right? So that's what you do. Powerpivot is the same thing. You're using DAX here. As you can see, I can write DAX formulas in this. Same thing. What we're doing in Power BI, we can do it in Excel as
well. Thanks a lot, Havish. So now there were 2 to 3 more questions, but these are different from these are not Excel related as a formula based, but in general.
Okay.
So Harish, I want to ask that I have been listening many times, being a management student, that RStudio is an essential for a marketing toolbox or a financial toolbox. So I want to know your views on RStudio versus Excel and which tool is advantageous over the other and in what scenarios?
Yeah, so the short answer is that unless you're working in research, unless you're working as a data analyst specifically, you will never need to learn R in your life. I work with most of the top CPG brands. So I work with GSK, Britannia, Kimberly-Clark. I come from Reckitt. I work with Unilever. I work with P&G. And I teach people in customer excellence, product managers, brand managers. Nobody knows R and nobody needs to know R. I completely fail to understand why this misconception is there that R is important. You only need to learn R if you're going to target a profile which specifically requires you to work on R. Other than that, for any general profile, you can spend your entire career without learning R. See, I do work on R, but that is not because I need to. I work on R because I have to teach it at colleges and there are certain tasks for which I need to use R. But I just fail to understand. If you go through job descriptions on Naukri.com or on Monster, that will give you the answer that you're looking at. How many profiles say that you need a requirement for R? If you're looking at data analyst profile, the most common things that you will find are Excel, basic SQL, and Power BI. Right? These three are the most important things. R is not mentioned anywhere. Unless, of course, unless you are specifically going in a profile that requires you to do data science, R is not a common tool that everybody needs to learn. That is my personal take on it, and I have a very strong opinion about it, because I feel very bad that students are learning something which is not going to help them get a better job, and they will not even use it in organizations. I don't have any dislike for it. Okay, I also work on R. That's what I showed you. I work equally on R and Python. But R is not a general tool that everybody needs to learn. Python is a general tool which I feel everybody needs to learn. And if I may take the liberty of saying so, see, I come from an academic background. I have been in education myself. I taught at Amity University for 2 years. I taught at Lal Bahadur Shastri, and I continue to teach at colleges. No disrespect meant to anybody. I have been a faculty myself. R is taught at colleges only because nobody has bothered to update the curriculum. R is taught at colleges because faculties are more comfortable teaching R over Python, because they have worked on R as a part of their academic work and their research papers and their PhDs. Python, on the other hand, is not something which is something they are comfortable with. And that's the reason that curriculum has never got modified. I'm on the board of several colleges where I help them create better content, and I help them create new curriculum. And I always put my foot down and say, do not include R. You want to teach it as a skill, but not as a must-have skill. I just fail to understand why that is the case. And you speak to anybody in the industry, and they will say the same thing that I'm telling you right away. Python is the tool that everybody should be learning right now, as of today. You cannot go and say that I don't know anything of Python. I'm a commerce student myself, Ishan, by the way. So I'm a commerce student with an MBA in marketing and finance. I have never studied IT in my life. I started learning coding in 2014 at the age of 27, because I realized that I have to be prepared for the future. I realized that I'm going to become obsolete in 5 years if I don't learn coding. And I started teaching myself VBA, which I worked on for a few years. I became a 40 under 40 in analytics in VBA. After that, I started learning Python. Then I learned R. Now I'm learning JavaScript. So, you have to learn programming. That is for sure. But R is really not the tool that you should be focusing on. That's my take on it.
And that take was backed up with really substantial information. So that's really great. So, Havish, like a couple of more questions, the last questions. Yep. So first of all, I want to know, there are certain examples that you've shared on Excel, Power BI for finance and operations vertical. So could you tell us some unique and exciting examples where we could use Excel in marketing roles for marketing analytics, and how we can draw marketing insights, for example, consumer insights, digital marketing performance insights, etc.?
Sure. So let me open an example for that. Okay, we can maybe start with this one. So what we have here is the transactional data for two regions. So I have sales per month for region A and region B, right? Now, if I ask you, analyze it, right? How is the market performing? How is, let's say, North region performing versus the South region? Usually what we do is we do an average, right? But the average is not really telling us everything that we need to know, right? So if I look at the average here, it tells me the average is 4462 and 4460. So at first glance, I might feel that, oh, they're performing very similarly to each other. But when we go into detail, you realize that there's a lot more to it. There are two ways we can do it. Number one, I can write functions myself, or I can use the data analysis toolpath. So I'm going to go to data and select data analysis toolpath, which is a free add-in available. And here I will select my descriptive statistics. What you do in SPSS basically. I will click on OK. I will select my input range as A2 to A26, and I want to create my summary statistics. What it does is, and I want to show the result on the same sheet. Okay. So what it does is that in one click, it gives me a lot of information about my data. So it is telling me that the mean is 4460. It is telling me my standard error is 621. My median, I don't have a mode, but that's okay. And my standard deviation. This is very important. So on an average, what is the standard deviation? The standard deviation allows me to understand the distribution of my data. Because if you look at the min and the min and the max is from 100 to 9944. Another way of doing this would be to create a visual. So what we can do here is I can select my data and I can create a box and whisker plot. So in my chart, we have our box and whisker. I mean, at first glance, it looks very boring, but then you realize that this is giving you a lot of information, because when I add the data label, you will see that it is telling me that my range is from 100 to 9944. This is my Q1 and Q3. So what does it mean? It means that 25% of my transactions are between 0 and 1907. And the top 25% of my transactions are above 7844 and 99. So when we say that to enter into an IIM, you need to have, let's say, a 98 percentile. What does it mean? It means that if you're in the top 2 percentile and if 2 lakh people gave the examination, then you're in the top 2%, right? You're in the top 4,000. That's what we are saying. So my top 25 customers are 7844 to 9944, like this. So when we are when we are undertaking a marketing campaign, right, we want to focus on the cream. The cream would be these customers, right, who are in that top 25%, because these are the customers who are contributing more to the business. This is the median and this is the mean. So 4276 is the median, which is the middle point, and then you have the average aspect, like this. Another thing you can do is, what should I show you? Yeah, you can look at the correlation. So like I have my sales and profit. So I can create a XY scatter, and I can see if I only look at 500. So I can see, sorry, let me do 100. So I can see these are the customers whose profit is over 100, right? On the other hand, if I say minus 400, it tells me that, just a minute. Okay, these are the customers who have a profit or a sales of at most 200. And if I make it 0, it tells me that these are only my profitable customers, right? So these scatter chart allow you to do customer clusters or do cohort analysis. But of course, Excel will have a lot of limitations. Like if you do the same thing on Power BI, if you remember the example that I showed you on my website, just a minute. This one, it's a beautiful example, something I do with, I think, nearly all my clients, which is to tell them how to identify the right customer clusters, like this. Just a minute. Look at this. So what is it doing? It is showing me 793 customers in a cluster right now. So x-axis is sales, y-axis is profit. So if I say that I only want to see profitable customers, I can say, okay, my profitable customers, which is above 0, are these, right? And then I say that, no, within my profitable customers, I just want to see cluster 1. These are customers in cluster 1, because for different customer clusters, you will have a different marketing campaign, right? A different spend will be done for them. And of course, if you want to do outlier detection and all, that is also possible, right? So if I just look at the extreme here, I can see who are the outliers in my data. So let me just deselect this. I can see that there is one outlier here, which either means that I need to delist the customer because this customer is very high on sales, high on profit, but there are very few customers like that person. So these are like my top customers. Yeah. Usually what we do in marketing analytics is use something called KNN, which is K nearest neighbors. K nearest, how should I explain it? So K nearest neighbors is one of the simplest machine learning algorithms where we say that there is a centroid. For example, if I have like this. So if I have customers in red and customers in green, it is telling me that this is the nearest point to which all these red customers are one cohort. That means they are homogeneous, and the green ones are another class because they are homogeneous like this, right? And of course, there are many other classification algorithms, but this all falls under machine learning, right? So we have SVM, which is support vector machines. We have gradient boosting. But you know what? Before you learn any of this, the first and the most important thing you need to learn is linear regression. Linear regression is the most common machine learning algorithm. For example, if I want to do a simple forecast like this, and I want to say that what is the expected sales in the next month. So if I have my advertising expenditure 82 lakhs, what is the sales? 15 crores. If my advertising expenditure increases to 92 lakhs, it becomes 25 crores. So I can just put in an equation and I can save a 92% variance confirmation, that I can save a 92% confirmation of variation, that if I put, for example, if I say that, if you look at this equation, everyone, next month, if I'm investing 115 lakhs, 1.15 crore in my advertising, what will be my expected sale? I can simply say that 0.4416 multiplied by this, which is 50. And on this, I want to add a minus 18.029. So it tells me that in the next month, if I increase my advertising expenditure by 6 lakhs to 1.16 crores, then I can expect like a 2 crore increase in my sales. If I decrease it, that means that my sales will drop down by 9 crores. This is nothing but machine learning, right? I don't know why people feel that linear regression is not machine learning. This is very much machine learning, but it's the simplest form of machine learning where you're looking at the sum of squares. And of course, there are many more advanced methods. So you have SVM, gradient boosting, you have different classification and regression techniques, right? The library that you should be learning for all of this is not on Excel. Excel is not the right tool for this. Neither is Power BI. You should be learning scikit-learn. I'm sure most of you have heard of it at least. Scikit-learn is the most popular machine learning library for Python. So that's the long answer to a very short question.
No, that was really interesting answer, and it's really interesting to revisit to, like, I guess the chart that you showed, it's similar to the candlestick chart that we referred to, right? For analyzing.
Candlestick is an extension of this, which is used typically for financial information, but this is something which is box and biscuit can be used really anywhere.
Yeah, so it was really good revisiting these charts and linear regression, and the way you explained the equation, it was really comprehensive. And so it was really great, Havish, and I'm really happy that this session is ending on such an informative note. And I'm really sure, I'm damn sure that everyone is taking a huge amount of information from this session. And when it comes to taking from this session, we also have another thing that you can take from this session, that is free courses and a certificate of attending this session. But for that, all the attendees have to register in the Google form link that is there in the description of the video of the live session. So register there, and you will get the free courses and the certificate for attending this lecture. And it was really great having you, Havish, and the Monster thanks you a lot. Like we are really thankful to you for organizing such a session, and we'll be looking forward to having you more.